Members of council, if you can please take your seats. Members of council. This meeting is now resumed. Okay, I will now take any release of holds. They haven't been circulated yet. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Speaker. There was an advanced circulation. I hope members have had a chance to have a look at it. It is TE 25.108. If somebody could help me with the page. Page 7, somewhere near the end of the list. It's the matter on laneway housing.
T 25.108, yes?
25.108. I have an amendment to the recommendations.
Do you mind just holding down until Anna has had a chance to see it?
Sure.
Thanks.
If we,
So happy to hold it, continue to hold it.
Just until Councillor Bilo has a chance to see it.
all right.
Yeah, no, but
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'm going to release the member motion, Speaker, on that I'm holding. MM 31.33. Oh, no, sorry, I won't do that. I'll do that later.
All right.
He's not here. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go back to the audit committee. We've completed the in-camera session. Now we will go to the public session. Do we have any speakers? Please put your name up, request to speak. Just one sec. Councillor Mammoliti, do you have a point of order?
Just a point of privilege for council and for the whole city, actually. We have the report that's in front of us that's been a part of our discussions. I've spoken to solicitor and they don't seem to have any issues with releasing it, and I'd like to release it to the public if possible, please.
Yeah. Yes. I have spoken to the solicitor. So, Councillor Mammoliti, I move that that document be made public. On favor?
So I will reiterate my advice that there are some statements in here about a particular individual, and I think you've heard from Councillor Fillion, but I suggest that you ask him to confirm that he does not have any objection to the entire document being made public. Council can waive the solicitor-client privilege of the document, but there are still pieces of it that could remain confidential for other reasons, and I could assist with redacting those unless the councillor is comfortable having that released.
Councillor Fillion.
Yes, I'm happy with the whole thing being released, and anything else that we've got on this that can be released.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. Question?
Okay,
Purple papered package, and the second
No.
one?
just that report that we circulated yesterday.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, Councillor Carroll.
Just checking. Thank you for your
Okay.
answer.
Okay, so on the motion, recorded vote.
Yeah.
Councillor Burnside, please.
The motion to waive council's privilege carries 29 to 1.
Okay, so we'll now go to speakers. Mayor Tory.
Point of privilege, please.
Councillor Mamalidi.
I'm going to ask us to reconsider, and I guess at this point I can speak freely with the report that we just released. Yes? Can I name names or no? I'm asking a legal
Yeah,
question.
Councillor Mamalidi, you're
All right,
not on the
then
floor
I'd
to
like-
speak.
I would like an opportunity to ask the author of this particular report questions, and I would ask them to be invited for us to be asking some questions and for him to answer them on behalf of the TPA. And now that this has been public, I think everybody understands why we need to ask him questions. There's going to be some dialogue here about this particular report, and we need to know why he wrote what he wrote. So I'd like to ask that we ask Mr. Gavin McKenzie to come and answer some questions.
Councillor Mamalidi, all the questions we've completed yesterday and today, the public questions in camera. Right now, we're going to speakers.
Yes.
That's where we are.
So I'd like to do that in the form of a motion, so it's on record that I've asked for it, please.
So it's a motion to vary the council
Yes.
procedures to bring...
Not in order.
Waive that. I'm sorry, Councillor Mamalidi, you can't.
I can't ask for that?
No, we're at speakers now. Mayor Tory to speak.
Well, Madam Speaker, thank you. I have some motions which have been pre-circulated, and I guess they can be put up on the screen or whatever is deemed desirable, but I'll just speak briefly to them. But I will repeat in public some things that I said in camera this morning, just because I think they can be repeated in either place. And I think one of the things I just want to say as the first speaker in this discussion this afternoon is that I hope we're all focused on our number one goal, which I hope is our number one goal every day here, which is the maintenance of public confidence in the government overall, in the functioning of City Council as the overseer of the government in the broadest sense, in the Toronto Parking Authority and its functioning, and so on and so on, that in the end, if we don't maintain public confidence, regardless of how right we think we are in what we're doing, or then we're not doing it right. And so I think that these motions are designed to make sure that we are maintaining public confidence through a process of resolution of some issues that are clearly out there. And I'm not going to spend a minute or a word talking about one report or another report or who said what to who, because quite frankly, the reason we're having the look-see that we're going to have at all of this is because there are some questions that remain unanswered, and it's our responsibility to determine what happened and to determine what lessons should be learned, to determine if there was any misconduct or incompetence or both, and all this kind of thing. And I have no conclusions to reach, nor do they matter anyway, on any of that. So what I am moving through these motions is, first of all, that we accept and adopt the confidential instructions to staff in confidential attachment 1, and that we direct that remain confidential in its entirety, as it contains advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. And then going forward to things that are going to be public in a more granular way here, the second motion deals with the board. And I should say that I think what we're trying to do here, and I want to make this very clear through my words, and I think the beginning language of the motions tries to make that clear in motion C, is that there has been no evidence of wrongdoing presented on the part of the board of the Toronto Parking Authority or its individual members. But when you are going through having a look at something to sort of go beyond these reports that we have in front of us now and trying to reach definitive conclusions, it is best that the board of the organization in question, in order to totally maintain public confidence and in order, quite frankly, to allow for a very pure review to take place where the people who are answering questions are not the same people that in effect have assigned the review to take place, that there be a separation. And there is a mechanism, fortunately, that allows all of those people to go on a leave of absence from the board, and that is what is proposed here. Secondly, that we would, in the meantime, compose the board of some city officials. And I think this is a very important point to pause on for a moment. Our city manager would be the chair, our chief corporate officer would be on the board, as would the deputy city manager in Cluster A. And there has been some talk, I know, of various people with various other permutations and combinations, including membership by councillors. But again, I would make the argument, first of all, that we should keep this, when I say clean, I mean simple. We should have some, and it's for an interim period while the reports are being written and whatnot. And that in addition, if people think this through very carefully, we are the body to whom ultimately will be given the report that is going to be presented in due course on all of this. And I think to have somebody over there overseeing that process, I think sets up exactly the same kind of thing that we're trying to avoid by having the board members currently step aside, including two members of City Council. So I think that we should, and obviously I'm advocating this because I'm moving it, but I think we should leave this as it is. We have 3 very trusted professional public servants who are going to go in with the help of the clerk's office, that's what motion B is all about, and administer the affairs of this corporation with the help of a very capable staff that they have over there, and they will proceed to do what's done, needs to be done while the rest of it plays itself out. The final motion, D, I just want to draw to your attention because it does something that I think is actually long overdue here, and it asks for a report on exactly how we do this. But I noticed with interest that that task force that was made up of some people that, including David Suknaki and a number of others who've had some experience in this building, they reported last week. And one of their recommendations was that we should have what they called a rolling review of all of our major agencies, boards, and commissions, rolling review such that you're reviewing them on a continuous basis, but that every agency or board or commission of substance gets reviewed at least once in each term of council. And I've just tried here to ask for the city manager to come back and tell us how we can do that, because I think that is an absolutely well-taken suggestion. I think this and other episodes that we've had go on tell us that. It's not going to prevent these kinds of things from happening, but it certainly is going to allow us to have a better, more regular eye on the governance of these places that are so important to the fabric of our city government and so important to the maintenance of public confidence. So I urge members to support these motions as I think a best way that we can move forward to bring this to a more satisfactory place. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Davis?
I just thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your motions, and I want to clarify your motion C applies to looking at maybe that's not here. It's in, you know what? I think what I want to ask about is in the confidential. But I did want to clarify that the lobbyist registrar and the Integrity Commissioner both have jurisdiction with respect to and governing legislative framework to investigate the actions and conduct of members of boards and of lobbyists. And I'm wondering if you think that it would be helpful to entertain further direction to give to the Integrity Commissioner and the Lobbyist Registrar to look at this issue.
I'm sort of betwixt and between in terms of commenting on that through you, Madam Speaker, to the councillor's suggestion, because I didn't move that, not because I sort of rejected moving it.
If it were to come in subsequent motions.
I'm sorry?
If that direction were to come in subsequent motions from other members of
my
council.
view on these things is that I believe those are, I guess they can be council initiated, but they're also kind of complaint initiated. Yes. And so if the legislation says what it does, which is they have the full power under their statute to investigate anything that is brought to their attention in the manner that is set out in the statute. And so to me, whether we do it or somebody else does it, I don't have a particular view on that. I'm happy with the reviews that we're going to be undertaking and that I've moved, and those are the ones I thought were the ones that were principally
Okay, so you would not be opposed to those other directions. Thank you.
Councillor Fillion, questions?
Thank you. Questions of the mayor. Mr. Mayor, would you agree that I'm the whistleblower in this case?
I guess if you choose to, I think certainly the auditor's report indicated you brought to her attention some of these concerns, and so in that sense, if you want to adopt that term to apply to yourself, I'm not going to say I have any problem with it.
And would you agree that it's, having read the Auditor General's report, would you agree that it's a good thing that I brought my concerns to her attention?
Well, I think when anybody in this council has a concern, or anybody on a board, I mean, when you're on a board, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the organization that you're serving. And so I think if you have a concern, it's a fundamental principle to me that you're not discharging your obligation if you don't bring that concern to somebody's attention. So in that sense, I would say you were doing your job. And so in that sense, I would say that that was a good thing to do.
So how do you think whistleblowers their concerns result in an investigation which justifies that they had something to be concerned about, how should they be treated by this organization?
I think they should be treated, Madam Speaker, through you, as being the same as anybody who did their job properly. I mean, it's expected of us that this is what we do. And I guess if what you're getting at is, that somehow it is not appropriate that you, together with other members of the board, should be asked to step aside and take a leave, I think perhaps there's a misunderstanding of why that's happening. It's happening because the board itself is actually overseeing and this trespasses a little bit off into the confidential, in-camera resolution, but the board itself is overseeing some further work that's going to be done to look at exactly what happened in light of these, I'll call them these differing reports. And I just think, as one, that it is better both for the maintenance of public confidence and for the orderly process of due process that the same people who are overseeing the investigations and whatnot not be the same people that might be called upon, for example, to give their thoughts to the investigator. So I think it's better to take that conflict away.
My information is that the board will not be overseeing the investigation, and I'm looking towards the person you look towards to confirm that would be in the hands of the appropriate person, that it will not be the board overseeing an investigation.
Well,
so that's, I guess that's not a question, but that's...
Through you, Madam Speaker, I would just say if you check the wording carefully of how this will all be initiated under the leadership of the chair of the Parking Authority, that may not be precisely right, but having said all that, there's another principle involved that I tried to speak to in my remarks both in camera and here, and they were the same remarks, but that is to say that ultimately our main responsibility, in my view, and it's just my own opinion and it's how I try to carry out my own job, is to maintain public confidence. And I think the public generally feel better when there are questions floating around. And this, I said very clearly, both in the motion, unusually, but also in my remarks, this is not meant to cast aspersions on anybody, but it is meant to say that the public can rest absolutely assured that everything will be looked at and that things will be administered in such a way pending the results of the inquiries that are being done, without any question of who did what or who might have done what or who said what about who, if you ask all of the board members without exception. If you start making exceptions for you or for some other person, then where do you stop? So this is a clean way, with the clear wording right in the motion that there's no evidence of wrongdoing on anybody's part, but we're going to take those people and say, you're going on a leave, thank you very much for accommodating that gesture, if I can call it that, to maintain public confidence. And I think that is the right thing to do, and that's why I moved this motion.
Do you believe there's no evidence that members of the board did not do their job?
We're here because there's a question about that. But I believe that the people to actually sit in and participate, other than to offer their opinions to those who are looking into it, that the notion they should continue on the board is not the best way to maintain public confidence or to give them the complete freedom to say whatever they want, not as board members, but as people who are on leave from the board and commenting on an inquiry. And so I believe this is the right thing to do. I wouldn't have moved this if I didn't think it was the right thing to do.
Last question, because I'm running out of time. Right. If there were 4 employees working side by side, one of them was a whistleblower who went to the appropriate authorities to investigate the conduct of the other 3, that person's concern was found to have merit. Should all 4 be suspended?
Well, Madam Speaker, I'm not going to answer that hypothetical question because it sort of presumes that I reach a conclusion that, that I sort of accept the fact that one, and I said, you did your job. And I say that through you, Madam Speaker, respectfully. You did your job in that any director of any board who feels he or she has a problem that they think is of something going on should bring it to the attention of whoever, the chair or anybody else. And so that's fine, but I think in the circumstances, I don't withdraw anything I've said. It is easier for us to explain to the public and maintain their confidence by saying all of the board, without exception, will step aside, and that's all that's going on here. They're stepping aside, going on a leave that is provided for in the bylaws or whatever, and that we will then see what happens with those board members once all is said and done. And I just think it's a cleaner way to do it to maintain public confidence, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Bragadakis?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Mayor, so in your motion C, that talks about sorry, excuse me, Councillor Matlow. I'm trying to ask questions. It talks about a leave of absence, so you're aware that the chair and the vice chair are paid positions. So are you suggesting leave with pay or without?
If we want to be consistent, well, I can't speak to consistency because some of it's in camera, but look, what I would have said on these things is that this is public service. These are honorariums we give these people. They're not substantial amounts of money, as I recall. I mean, not hugely substantial. I would have said that if it's a couple of months, they should do it without pay, but it's not meant to pass a judgment. So, to me, it doesn't matter. And you're right, we haven't set it out, and if we need to set it out, then we should. But I would say, but maybe it's easy for me to say, I'd say without pay, but if it's important for consistency or any other reason they get their pay, then fine.
So would you be opposed to leave without pay?
No, I wouldn't be opposed to either one, quite frankly. That shows I didn't think about it because I really believe what directors get when they serve the public in this manner is meant to be more of a honorarium, respecting their time, as opposed to any kind of a marketplace indicator of what directors get paid. This is way less than what directors get.
Okay, so maybe we can chat about an amendment to this. Also, in your motion B, it talks about...
E or D?
B.
B, thank you.
Number 4, about any necessary modifications to the procedures for the board, and that can be drafted and approved by City Council. And I'm wondering if you would consider any whistleblower policy for board members as part of that review, and if so, would you be willing to have that articulated?
Yeah, I will just say from my experience on corporate boards, which I had extensive experience on corporate boards before I came here, it has been standard fare for decades, literally decades now, that you had whistleblower provisions and all kinds of things that are meant to accommodate, making it easy for people to come forward if they think there's wrongdoing. And I think the notion that the parking authority and some of our other agencies and boards are very large enterprises. And there are going to be lots of moving parts and lots of people and lots of opportunity, unfortunately, for stuff to maybe catch somebody's eye. And so to me, if you made it easier for people to come forward and bring these things to the attention of the necessary authorities, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So I have no problem with that at all.
Okay, so when you're done questioning, maybe you and I could chat offline about how to amend those.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question through you, Madam Speaker, to the Mayor is on motion C, again on the composition and the kind of amending the composition that's being proposed. Is there a need to have the board composition amended? I understand the need for leave of absence, but is there a way for us to have the organization under the supervision of the individuals instead of being amended as a board? So this basically means there's going to be 3 new board members that are going to be introduced into the structure. Is that the only option that we have available in this case?
No, actually, I think I'm right in saying that subject to the bylaws, which may provide for the size of the board being a certain size, and you'd have to change that, we can do whatever we want within the confines of how many board seats there are. But I simply made the case in my remarks, Madam Speaker, through you to the councillor, that I think that the 3 here, and there's no magic to these 3 or to 3 people as opposed to 5 or 6, that there was a notion floating around. I know that we sort of fiddled with this, and including in particular something that's more than a fiddle, which is putting on, one or more city councillors. And I believe that this is simple. This is 3 of our most trusted senior public servants, and that we, as the body that will ultimately receive the results of some of these inquiries, should not have people that are over there on the board, I don't think, at the same time as we're doing that. So it's cleaner not to have councillors there for now. And it's meant to be an interim arrangement, obviously, to be replaced by some board. And of course, in here, there's recommendations that could be made to us about the composition of the board going forward. But at that time, that's when you would then put councillors back on, if that's something that's recommended. But in the meantime, I think we're better off not to.
No, I do understand why it's better off not to add more people, but my question is whether these 3 individuals who can be trusted with this responsibility have to be named as board members. Is there another way for this to happen if they were delegated a supervisory role
I
or
think
something?
you'd find, Madam Speaker, that if you looked at the way this company is structured, and I haven't done a detailed review of the bylaws, but I'm sure they require there be a board of directors, that the board of directors has powers that most board of directors have, and that decisions to be made about signing contracts or about, just as what we're looking at here was about signing of a major contract, there has to be a board. And I suspect it may even say the board could be 1 person, but I think that's not usually advisable. So I think by having 3, you have enough people that they can both share the responsibility but also meet together. And so I'm sure, yes, you do have to name somebody as directors of this company if you're having the entire board that presently is there step aside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, regarding 4D, this is with regard to the 4-year rolling review, which I agree with. So you would include in those organizations that should be reviewed the Police Services Board, the Toronto Transit Commission, Toronto Hydro, and Waterfront Toronto?
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, and again, I haven't specified that, and I would expect the report coming back from the city manager would have a list attached to it as well of which things are included. Because I think we have some teeny tiny boards that, you might say, well, maybe not that one, but I mean, I think certainly those are some of the big ones, and those for sure would be on the rolling schedule, and so once per term they would get reviewed. And I would expect that the city manager will set out the kind of scope of that review and how it would happen, because what you don't want this to do is turn into an industry, that you have, half 2 floors of people that are just doing reviews all the time. But I think you want them to be serious and certainly apply to the largest and even some of the not so large agencies and boards that fulfill important responsibilities but don't really get reviewed all that often.
And the report would come back this year?
Well, I would hope. Well, the report on the process, yes, I would certainly hope that would come back coincident, perhaps with. My thinking was before the end of the year, so that's my own thinking. But obviously, we'd want to get the advice of the city manager on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi, if I can please have, to my right, please some quiet, please. Councillor Mamalidi.
So while we're looking at all of this, you're replacing the current board temporarily with 3 staff people.
That's correct.
Okay. And well, there'll be some hype about a particular board member who felt that he could do whatever he wants to do. Would you agree with me that while we're looking at any process...
Hold on. Just a sec. Yes, I've got. Councillor Mamalidi, can you please retract that comment?
What did I say?
A certain board member can do what he wants to do. Can you please retract that?
All right.
You're asking a question to the mayor and asking a question on the motions that the mayor has moved. Can you retract that comment, please?
I'll retract that comment and I'll replace it with this one. In the report on page 2, it says that Councillor Fillion's conduct interfered with normal course of TPA's real estate acquisition process in respect of property.
Yes,
and then it also says that his
Councillor
conduct
Mamalidi.
overall has been calculated
Councillor
to
Mamalidi.
undermine the intent of City Council's direction
Councillor
to purchase
Mamalidi.
the property. Now, in doing that, Mr. Fillion...
Okay, Councillor Mamalidi, you're to ask questions on the mayor on the motion. The motions.
I am.
No, you're not.
I am.
You are not, Councillor Mamalidi.
I promise you I am.
Well, I promise you you're not. So can you please?
In doing that, we've got these comments in a report. Will this look at what's been said with respect to the lawyer's opinion as well? Are we going to be looking at all of the activity that seemed to have happened around the board and the concerns of this lawyer as well?
I have deliberately said here, through you, Madam Speaker, that I'm not going to comment on any of the reports except what I've already said, which is that when the auditor's report came out, it gave me great concern, and some of the things I'm moving here are meant to be a response to that, to help us all maintain public confidence. But certainly, I think it's the expectation of all of us that the inquiries that are to follow will look at everything that's on the record and maybe things that aren't on the record at the moment, and make sure we get to the bottom of this to maintain public confidence and to take whatever steps are deemed necessary to make sure that that we bring this to a proper resolution. So other than that, I won't comment on any of the stuff that's in any of these reports.
The Speaker has allowed you to entertain questions on whistleblowing and to such. And I'd ask a similar question with respect to what we're looking at, and that is, should anybody on the board be able to just go to everybody's office whenever they want to and make them feel abused, as was written in the report? And should we be looking at each board member actually making sure that they act as a board member and not go in and threaten people and make them feel like they're all going to lose their job?
Madam Speaker, without commenting on any of that, I will just say that Part 4 of Motion C specifically asks the City Manager to report on the governance and composition of the board. And the governance part, I think, could well contain. One of the things I've certainly learned here in government is that people feel much freer as directors of corporations that are owned by the city and going and telling management what to do and doing all kinds of things that normally you would not find directors doing elsewhere, because it's a misunderstanding of what the role of a director is, which is to oversee and set policy and then let management carry it out. Having said all that, I think that is what we're going to look into, is all of these things, because I can't really comment on the specifics of what you or any other report said. I've said I won't do that.
No, but I want to make sure that
I hope they'll look into it all.
They're looking into
everything,
including a whole wing of the TPA going to its HR department and casting a very, in my opinion, a very valid argument about what happened with one particular
I hope if it's something that people want to bring to the attention, they know Mr. Wallace's phone number, and I assume they'll come to know what the phone number is of others who are involved, and they can bring these things to their attention.
And on your motion as well, I've read the Auditor General's comments and recommendations. She actually recommends that we increase the board. She doesn't speak directly to any indication that she would like this board taken out. This isn't you're not doing this in a way that is critical of the board members. You're doing it because you feel like you need to intervene here with this particular motion.
I'll just read paragraph 3, Madam Speaker, paragraph 1 of motion C. City Council acknowledged, while there's been no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the Board of the Toronto Parking Authority or any of its individual members, it is in the city's and its board's interest for them to be an interim governance arrangement. And then number 4 asks the city manager to report back on governance. And if the city manager comes back and says to us, he thinks, and his advisors, there should be a board of 12 people, then I'll certainly look at that with interest. I would say, as a matter of interest, that an enterprise of this size, ordinarily, if it was a publicly traded company, would have somewhere around 11 or 12 directors, and that's not seen to be unusual, but it doesn't have 20 and it doesn't have 4. So somewhere in between lies the best number, and I assume our city manager will give us a report on that with his best advice.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Speaker, I just wanted to give the mayor a chance to clarify, because I think we're about to head now to speakers. Our process makes you read all these motions out. You didn't have a chance to preface. And the debate in the council chamber, the question/debate, is really in the context of a lot of in-camera discussion. But should the public take from your motion, particularly motion C, that in fact you are grateful for the service of every board member to this point. And that's why they're going on a leave of absence. And you are, in fact, grateful to Councillor Fillion for, when he had a concern, bringing it forward to the proper authority, the Auditor General, and you're grateful to her for looking into it. Should the public take that from your motions?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I want to say yes to that, but perhaps yes with an asterisk, because, look, part of what's being examined here is how the governance process worked. And certainly, I will just say to you as one reader of the Auditor General's report that I wouldn't come away from this sort of saying that the board governance process worked perfectly, because we wouldn't be here if it had. So I would just say that what I tried to say in the motion, and I even insisted the wording be put in paragraph 1 that says this is not because anybody is found to have done anything wrong. It is simply because it is best for the maintenance of public confidence, and it is best for a very, if I can call it clean, transparent review of what's gone on here, that this board should step aside. And that's another important consideration here. They've been asked to step aside as opposed to having their appointments terminated, which we could do. And so that is my way of saying that while on the one hand I can't say everybody necessarily, I wouldn't know, frankly, whether they deserve the good housekeeping seal of approval or something less or something more. But that's what we're going to look at. But in the meantime, we're simply saying, no offense in terms of you having done or not done anything. We're just saying, please, would you stand aside while we take a look at all this, and then we'll see where we go from there once we have the results in hand of the things we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for the questions. Councillor Davis, Councillor Holliday, you held the item down. You're next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe that I've got a motion that can go up on the screen.
Do we have the motion ready?
I do.
Is the motion ready?
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, there it is.
So the two parts. The first is to ask the Integrity Commissioner to review the circumstances of the matter and any other relevant information, and if necessary, make recommendations about possible code of conduct or policy amendments pertaining to the TPA board or any local board regarding whistleblower or dissenting viewpoint protections for board members. And then number two, and an acknowledgement of Councillor Davis. I know that she had been planning to move something similar. The City Council forward copies of the reports from the Auditor General and external counsel for the TPA to the Integrity Commissioner with a request that she conduct an investigation into whether members of the board contravene the code of conduct in dealing with this matter. So as chair of the Audit Committee, this is one of those reports that you read with tremendous interest and concern. The auditor speaks to $2 million that could potentially have been overspent of taxpayers' money. In fact, the auditor goes so far to say that she was very confident that it would have been spent had not the audit occurred at the time that it did. She also went on to explain things that she described as a hairball of conflicting interests. And this inability to obtain, or maybe even some missing documents. And the report even speaks to a lack of process around whistleblower protection, or how somebody wanted to ask questions about a document and couldn't get their answers. So I've got a lot of concerns about that, but so do members of the public. Now, as board members, and many councillors have served on a board, including myself, I understand that the buck ultimately stops with us. And I think I would be tremendously upset on any of the boards that I served on that if I went to ask for a document or some information about an upcoming decision that I essentially have accountability for, if I was denied access to that. Now, I don't really know exactly how it transpired. We've got a couple of documents here that are now in the public domain that, frankly, I read, but I can't really understand the difference between the two. Maybe somebody else needs to have a look at that, and that's the Integrity Commissioner and others that we're going to commission to do some reports on this. But at that very same notion, I think in the public's eyes, the buck stops with council to do something about this. And that's my hope, is that we're going to do something that is both firm and fair, but it does meet the fiduciary duty of this council to address this matter. What's in our purview? The board is, not the management day-to-day activity of the TPA, but the board of the TPA is, and for us to get some understanding on how this transpired. And that's why I'm suggesting that the Integrity Commissioner look at it. I think that works hand in hand with the suggestion by the mayor that there be a change in the board for a temporary basis. But we do know, and in the public's eyes, is that status quo cannot be an option. We actually have to change it. It cannot continue the way it is. On the operational side, I think things will change over time. We know that we are going into a real estate transformation, culminating towards the end of the year. So some of these matters about the transactions will correct themselves. That's not to say that there aren't other contents of the Auditor General's report and the other documentation that we have that we shouldn't be looking at. But the long picture of the operations, we do have, this is heading somewhere where we need to go. And with that, I hope you'll consider supporting these two. I think it goes a long way to restore public confidence in our city government, and also get some clarity and some process around anyone that serves on a board about what they can and cannot do, or how they should go about bringing forward concerns that they have. And with that, I see I've got some questions.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, questions, clarification of the motion, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I noticed that you only have Integrity Commissioner. When we heard from, when we read in the report, there were lobbyists involved with this. Would you be opposed to a friendly amendment to include the lobbyist registrar?
Most certainly not, and frankly, I'm aware that there's another councillor that has that very motion in mind, and if she wants to place that, I would be happy to support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis?
Speaker, through you to my colleague. I could be mistaken, but I think the Integrity Commissioner works along the ways that a complaint has to be placed. Somebody needs to sign a complaint, an affidavit. In this instance, who is, if that's the case, who is signing that affidavit? Who's launching that complaint?
Thank you for raising that question. It was something I made a note to mention in my speech, but I have checked with the solicitor, and I understand it's in order for us to, as a city council, to ask the Integrity Commissioner to have a look. And I think there's value in putting the weight of council behind that type of concern. I think that's very symbolic to the public that we all have taken an interest in this matter, have looked at these documents and have questions, and therefore want to go and get the advice of the Integrity Commissioner about what she may find.
Can we have the motion back up again, please?
It's on your desk, right there.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So what you're suggesting is that we ask the Integrity Commissioner to look at everything, or just a specific matter?
Well, there's two parts to the motion. The first is generally about policy and around whistleblower or dissenting protection. And in light of what we saw in this case, I think it's worth having a look at the rules and giving some general advice. But the second part is very, very specific to this particular transaction, and I'm suggesting that we suggest that the Integrity Commissioner have a closer look at the conduct of the board.
Going back to number one.
Sure.
I think the Integrity Commissioner has the authority and it overlooks that board, correct?
It does, yes.
Okay. So she also gives advice to the individuals that sits on that board, and she, having that, how do you suggest, are you suggesting something particular regarding a whistleblower?
Well, it was very evident to me in reading these reports that the way that things unfolded, according to the documentation with Councillor Filion, there was some disagreement between board members and Councillor Filion about how this is to be handled, and perhaps boards in general could be best served with a bit more advice on how to handle these situations in the future.
Well, this is what elected politics is for. You don't need an Integrity Commissioner to tell you how to look at dissenting viewpoint. You have an argument, you have a discussion, and in that point in time, you vote. I don't think that we need how does an Integrity Commissioner be able to tell us how to look at dissenting view? Do we need something like above to tell us what to do?
I think that she is an expert in the code of conduct, and I think she can provide some helpful advice, but I'd like to give her the opportunity for that. Maybe the advice is very minimal. Maybe it's none. Maybe it's everything's okay. But if we don't ask those questions in the wake of what we're reading here, I don't think we're discharging our responsibility as a council.
Thank you. That was your last.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Mammoliti, clarification of the motion, 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have any real concerns with the two motions that you have. I'm just a little bit concerned, having seen and saw it unfold, that many of the issues that even staff had were that they wanted to give information to the whole board and not one member at a time, right? So how do we get around that so that when a member does have some questions, it doesn't mean that 8 or 9 board members are all going to go to everybody's office individually and say, I demand to know the answer to my question. It's my understanding that that's not how it works right now, that information goes directly to the board about anything, and individual members of any board should be getting it with everybody else.
I don't disagree, Councillor Mammoliti, and I'm not an expert in governance or process on this, so that's why I'd like to have someone with that expertise come in and tell us how it should properly work and make sure everyone's clear on that. We know in this chamber how it works with essentially this board or this council is that we are able to go on an individual basis and get those questions and those answers. If it needs to be different in a board setting, I'm quite willing to hear that advice and take that advice, and I think also even looking retrospectively on this storyline, maybe the Integrity Commissioner has an opinion on that as to what was right and what was not the right way to do things.
So even if, I guess if it comes back the way some might want, every board member will have the right to go ask anybody in a particular outfit about anything they want and get the response outside of the board.
Councillor, through the chair to you, I really don't know what the correct answer to that is in a board setting. I would really prefer to have some expert advice. What I can say is that if an individual is to be held accountable as a board member, they should be entitled to the information they need to make an effective decision. And they should have that information adequately in advance and in a format that can be used.
Sorry, individually or as a board?
Again, that's probably the best answer, the best question to ask is one of the experts in the process.
Okay.
So I prefer to leave it to them.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, questions, 3 minutes, clarification of the motion.
Thank you, Speaker. Councillor Holliday, as you know, I had a similar motion, and I'm wondering if you would consider a couple of short amendments to yours and to just get clarification. So on recommendation 2, you say that she conduct an investigation into whether members, could we add current and past, so we understand it's all affected board members?
I do not have issue with that, other than I would like to have the advice of the solicitor on that and the preparation, because I understand the wording of these are very important, but I don't see that as I don't see that as a problem of increasing the scope.
Current and past members who were involved in this matter?
Yeah, we should get advice on that, I think, but you know, broadening the scope I have no issue with, because that's a transparency issue.
Okay, and secondly, you said the board. I had originally the Toronto Parking Authority and the Emery Village BIA. They are both boards and they are both governed by the Code of Conduct. Would you be willing to add in TPA and EVBIA?
Well, because the report before me really focuses on the TPA, I would prefer to leave this motion integral, and I would invite you to place other motions if you wanted to do something else.
Okay, then I'm going to step back from the speakers list so I can add an amendment to this motion, which would be to add current and past in front of members and TPA and EVBIA. And I'll come and give those to you.
Okay, so just
Do you have them?
Just take your name off them. Take your name off, and then you can put it on after. If you want to take your name off the list.
I think that they've done it already.
No, it's
No?
on the
Okay.
list. Okay. Counselor Fletcher, questions?
I just wanted to follow up on that question by Councillor Davis, where you say in part 2, whether members of the board contravened the code of conduct. Would this mean members of the board during the period that this transaction was taking place, or the current members of the board?
Well, Councillor Fletcher, there's no intent to narrow the scope of the ability for the Integrity Commissioner to look at what she needs to. So if there's an amendment needed to broaden this to make sure that it's a successful review, I invite someone to make that amendment. I would just ask that they check with the solicitor to make sure that it is worded correctly. This is the wording that I've got, and I don't want to tamper with it.
I'm asking your intent.
Yeah,
of
my
the motion.
intent
is
is
to have that conduct looked into of the members of the board during the period that this was an active file. So say from...
Yeah, the intent is not to narrow, so it would be to be inclusive of anyone that she needs to speak to sort this out.
So I just want to be clear. So you're happy to have that clarified if the solicitor...
I have no problem clarifying that.
I could ask the solicitor, but we're not in that period any longer. So I can't
Yeah,
do
just
that.
make sure that the wording is okay. That's all I ask.
And
I
just
know that
in-
this wording works.
In your opinion, and I'm not sure that the role of the board, of course, the fiduciary responsibility is very important. You would agree with me with that? Of course. And to ensure that the city's money is being spent wisely is also something that all board members, particularly councillors, may have that as their duty when they're on different boards representing this council.
I think depending on your role as a board member or city councillor, you look at those with different lenses, but they're important no matter what.
So that's one of the things that you're hoping to draw out. And
With respect to the Integrity Commissioner, I'm not really sure she looks at value for money. I hope people ask those questions, but that's not part of this motion.
but someone pursuing dollar issues as part of a board, even if it's not at the board table, would you not assume that's one of the roles and duties of a board member?
I think, respectfully, that's a question best asked of the Integrity Commissioner, who could speak to how that relates to the Code of Conduct, which is what I understand she reviews these matters, the lens that she reviews these matters with.
So maybe the city manager will be looking at that feature when
Quite
he's
possibly.
looking at the board governance
Quite
matter.
possibly.
I see how you're dividing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Madam Speaker, I have a motion, and my motion is to retain the 2 members of council currently appointed to the board. The reason I move this motion, to step back, I'm in complete agreement with the mayor when he suggests that the process that he has submitted through his motions is a cleaner process. I have no disagreement whatsoever. And I also want to acknowledge the chair of our committee at audit, Stephen Holliday, for the leadership that he provided through this process, the Auditor General, and Councillor Fillion for blowing the whistle to begin with. But, Councillor Fillion, I think, raised some important points that provide some nuance to the debate over cleanliness. This isn't clean. This whole process, as I said earlier, smells. So much to do with it smells, and raises reasonable questions by intelligent, reasonable people. But the answer to the question, whether or not Councillor Fillion was the whistleblower, the answer I would respectfully submit is yes, he was, inarguably. He blew the whistle on this. And did he do a good job? He did so much more than just the random job of a director. He demonstrated courage, stubborn, resolute, and necessary courage to be able to challenge something that looked very, very wrong. He requested information over and over and over again and was denied and denied. And when he saw that something at the 11th hour was going to go possibly even worse, he brought it to the attention of the Auditor General, who very swiftly picked up the phone, started making calls on her own, and avoided the worst case scenario, which would have been a great waste, perhaps, of public dollars. So Councillor Fillion, I believe, acted with courage and should be commended by us all. But what happened? Rather than the focus solely beyond individuals who I think reasonable questions could be raised about, the whole narrative started turning back towards Councillor Fillion at the board itself and since. Kind of reminds me of how Donald Trump talks about the media, right? It's not my problem, it's CNN. Focus on CNN. I'm going to wrestle CNN. Look how bad they are. That's what's happening to Councillor Fillion. I would respectfully submit to you all. This is the moment where we need to stand with Councillor Fillion, I believe. Forget his politics, whether you like them or not. It doesn't matter if you like him or hate him. It doesn't matter any of these dynamics. He is a member of council who has demonstrated courage and did something incredibly important. And he is under siege. What I'm concerned about is by removing Councillor Fillion, and again, I want to make this very clear also through you, Madam Speaker, to the Mayor and others. This is not a challenge to the wisdom or the thought process of the Mayor's motions. I agree with 99% of the substance of it. I think that it's an effort to provide accountability, and I also know that the City Manager will fulfill this investigation, implement this investigation appropriately. I have confidence in Mr. Wallace. The nuance that I'm providing is that the signal that we send to potential whistleblowers throughout our system, we've had these conversations about whistleblowing a lot at Audit Committee. I don't want anyone in any of our ABCs, any of our agencies, divisions, anywhere in an organization to think that if they whistleblow, if they ring the bells about wrongdoing or potential wrongdoing as they perceive it, that in some way, some even unintentional punitive action will be taken towards them, that they will be suspended from their role. That's just wrong. It's not natural justice, in my opinion. Councillor Fillion has said that he would like to remain on the board. I also have assurance from the City Manager that the board itself will not be undertaking the investigation. The City Manager will be fulfilling that. It will not be done with the oversight of the board. It would be wrong, I submit to you all, to remove Councillor Fillion under duress, when what he did was ask the tough questions, the right questions. He saved money, he protected tax dollars, he provided more accountability, and none of this would be happening if it wasn't for him. So I ask you to stand with Councillor Fillion.
Thank
We did
you.
the right thing.
Thank you. We do have a question for you, Councillor Shan. 3 minutes, clarification of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just trying to figure out the connection between, I do understand the courage Councillor Fillion exhibited in bringing this forward, but being part of the board, how is that connected? So just explain to me, if possible, through you, Madam Speaker, how can we as a council select to keep only the elected representatives and not the citizen representatives in our board when we move forward?
That's a very reasonable and fair question, and it's something I thought about too. So one fact is that council, the fact actually remains that we can select whatever configuration we want, and we are. We're doing that no matter what we do today. We can either select to remove the entire board, we can just replace the chair, or we can be selective about the members. I'm not actually, through piecemeal, sort of selecting one individual or another. What I'm submitting, though, is that we, of our body, council, we have 2 elected representatives who have done nothing wrong. And in fact, Councillor Fillion not only has done nothing wrong, he did everything right. So, Councillor Lee may agree with the Mayor's motion, may even not want to be on it. That'll be up to Councillor Lee in his own prerogative how he'd like to handle that or approach that. But on principle, again, without challenge or opposition, sincerely in principle, I believe that we have to stand with a member of council who has not only done his job honorably, but has indicated to us that he wishes to continue to do so. And that's why I believe that we should move in that direction.
So I have a couple more questions, and I'll wrap it up with that. One is related to if the board is still functional, and even though the investigation is being undertaken by somebody else, the board is still overseeing the operations of the organization, that is, many parts of which are under investigation. So do you not see that the board continuing to be there while the investigation is happening, still having the oversight role, B, if there is any wrongdoing of any board member in there, be able to be interfering in this? And the second thing is, we talked about whistleblowers being protected. Do you see a difference between staff who are whistleblowers and board members who are whistleblowers? There's a distinction in terms of people losing jobs versus people not being on a board while the investigation happens.
So with respect to the trusteeship, the governance of the board, governing its operations, that will continue. And Councillor Fillion has contributed, as many members have, at each board meeting. The matters that are going to be under investigation will not be discussed at the board meetings. That is going to be undertaken by the city manager. He will most likely be asking for outside assistance. That'll be his prerogative as he sees fit. But I can assure you, based on the information that I received directly from the city manager himself, that this will not be a conflict. In fact, I would actually assure you that if I believed for a moment that there was any confusion between the two roles, I wouldn't be moving the motion that I am. If I thought that Councillor Fillion would in some way be making decisions about an investigation that he's named in some way, I wouldn't move this. That's how confident I am based on the information that I've received directly from the city manager.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Councillor Lee to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the Mayor's motions, and I will not be supporting Councillor Matlow's motion 3. And I'll tell you why, because I joined the board at the beginning of this year. And I put my name forward at the end of last year to join the TPA board because the report came to audit committee in October of last year. And I was the chair of the audit committee at that time. And by reading the report, I really did not know how the board of the TPA functions. That is why I put my name forward to join the board to understand. Because when we asked questions at the audit committee, I was told that due diligence is done only after they make the offer and things of that nature. So the process, I wanted to find out more about it. So thanks to this council, I was put on the board and learned a lot of how that board functions. And I've always believed that in real estate, that we have so many different organizations, silos at our city, that nobody really knows what is going on. So that's why I fully support the idea of putting under the real estate all under one agency, real estate agency, and I support that. Now, to be fair to everyone, I'm the member of that board that started this year, after the time frame when of this report. So, but I'm a member of that board, so I should be following like the rest of the board and allow an independent board on the interim to take over and do a proper, unobstructed investigation and report back to council. At which time, that's why I asked Councillor Holliday whether the lobbyist registrar is going to be also be asked to investigate. And I understand that Councillor Davis is going to be moving that motion, and I will support that motion as well. To be fair to everyone, especially the owners of the TPA. And the owners of the TPA is the residents of Toronto. We are just the caretakers here, the board of directors, that helps manage the city of Toronto. So I believe that this needs a fair airing of all the facts, which I believe that the city manager and the two members that we're putting on the board will do. That's why I'm in support of the mayor's motion to help clear the air and to bring integrity and accountability back to TPA. Thank you.
Very well said.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, of course, will be supporting the Mayor's motion for further review. I, unlike Councillor Matlow, do not. I do not find the same odors from the report that the Auditor General has written. I think that there's a number of coincidences that have taken place. I think that some people have come to conclusions that I think are unfounded to this point in time. This, to me, is a case built to fulfill a hypothesis. I don't fault the Auditor General for doing that. She was led down a pathway, quite correctly by Councillor Fillion, but as I mentioned earlier in my comments, the Auditor General usually goes in after the fact. This was a point in time when she went in and interrupted a process that was ongoing. So my personal view is that when all of the evidence comes out, once the city manager and his team have concluded their findings, that we will not find that there has been wrongdoing. I think that we will find that there have been a series of unfortunate coincidences. We may find there have been some misjudgments on the part of those that were involved, but I really don't feel that we're going to find that there was any wrongdoing done on the part of the people or the board at the Toronto Parking Authority. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually come to the same conclusion in terms of the way I'm going to vote as Councillor Campbell, but actually couldn't disagree with him more on how I got there. I'm hoping that as a council, we won't be willfully blind and that we'll allow the city manager to investigate this fully. To me, there are many troubling issues, but two stand out. First, during the due diligence period, the TPA decided, and I'm quoting the Auditor General here, decided to include the potential to add a second sign on the property. Even though, and now I'm going off quoting, even though by the consultant's own estimation there was only a 25% chance of that approval. I know yesterday we like to quote about our children, so if you want to put that in the context of children, that's like having a child in grade 12 with a 25% average and preparing to send him or her to university. It's just not happening. You know, well, be that as it may, the point is it's not happening. 25% with a 25% chance, with a 25%. You're not getting anywhere, okay? But irrespective. Secondly, backdating a report from a date after the Auditor General began her investigation to before it needs to be looked at further. As for the report commissioned by the TPA board, I find that actually somewhat embarrassing. Although its stated purpose was to, quote, provide guidance in responding to the Auditor General's report, what it really was about was impugning the whistleblower, in this case, Councillor Fillion. The classic, as Councillor Matlow alluded to, the classic, hey, look over there. This is not about Councillor Fillion. This is about finding out the truth about the actions of the TPA board, whether they were right or wrong, and none of us should be scared of finding that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. I have two motions. The first motion requests that the lobbyist registrar undertake an investigation of the conduct of the lobbyists and consultants who are involved in this matter. And secondly, I spoke of this earlier after Councillor Holliday moved his motion, and that is to make two amendments to his motion to add current and past members of the boards of both the Toronto Parking Authority and the Emery Village Business Improvement Area. And I'll speak first to the first one, which is the lobbyist registrar investigating the conduct of the lobbyists and the consultants that were involved in this matter. Anyone who has read this report can only come to the conclusion that the consultants and the lobbyists who were involved in this web of relationships have got to be investigated. You only need to pick up this document, which is now public. As I was starting to make my notes, you just need to read the headings. A lobbyist was involved with the negotiations of the agreement of purchase and sale. Lobbyist appears to have been aware of how the purchase price was negotiated. Lobbyist received copies of the draft agreement of purchase and sale. Lobbyist may have been helped to advance the financing of the flagpole. Had access to in-camera information. The lobbyist's billings confirm he provided advice to the TPA. The lobbyist was also the signed consultant's lobbyist. I could go on, but I will leave it at that. That is a litany of very questionable activities by both consultants and lobbyists involved in this matter, and it does involve the Emery Village BIA. This lobbyist was under contract and paid up to $1 million and was involved in interrelationships with both the board members of the Emery Village BIA as well as the TPA, and performed functions that I think were well beyond the scope of what would normally be a lobbyist. We also saw the consultant who was asked to give advice on the pricing of the sign, ended up putting his name on top of a pricing that was done by a staff person at the TPA. The lobbyists worked for everyone involved in this network of relationships. It has to be investigated. And secondly, my second motion, which says we must look at the members of the TPA, both current and past. I think the time frame, during the time frame of this matter, there were changes in the board of directors. I have struggled with whether to support the amendment that would allow Councillor Fillion and Councillor Lee to remain on the board. I've listened to both of them and their views, and I've thought about and read what is before us, and have come to the conclusion that I think it's probably in their personal interest and in the interest of the city to have a break and to have a very neutral position taken with respect to the board for the purposes of the investigation. But I do not believe for one moment that signals a neutrality in terms of the actions of the people who were involved in this board. I think Councillor Fillion has brought to light, and I want to thank him for that, what I believe are some very questionable relationships, some very questionable transactions, and some very questionable conduct by the members of both the boards and of staff involved, and we should be looking to have all of those matters thoroughly investigated. The lobbyist registrar has the jurisdiction to investigate under her own legislation. The integrity commissioner also has jurisdiction to investigate the conduct of both the board members. And along with the mayor's investigation, we will be covering all of the bases and we'll have a thorough review.
Thank you very much. We do have a question for you, Councillor Karygiannis, clarification of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we have the motion back up on the board, please? The motion.
Councillor Davis's motion.
Yeah, there's both of them, please. My question.
They're right here if you want them.
Thank you. My question is that you're saying that we should go current and past. How far past do you want to go?
whatever the time period is appropriate for the investigation of this matter. It goes back, I think, at least a year. It certainly it goes back to 2015, and there have been board changes since then.
Do you want to add, do you want to craft, I mean, would you be favorable to an amendment that it says that to address this issue only? Because right now you leave it open-ended and it says, by adding the word securing and passing Toronto Parking Authority and the Amory Village improvement, so that now reads like the follows.
It says in dealing with this matter, it's very specific.
Yes. It's already specific.
It's already in
All
there.
right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good catch, though.
Eh,
Okay, I didn't see the,
Yeah, you're right, that's important, Jim.
Thank you.
What'd you make me say?
Councillor Carroll to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support Mayor Tory's motions. Regrettably, I can't support Councillor Matlow's motion. I hope there won't be any more motions. That's my fondest wish, because I think we've covered it. We are very lucky. Not every city has a full suite of accountability offices, and we've just elected to employ them all going forward. We have a robust set of codes of conduct, and an overarching one that covers us, covers private citizen members on boards, gives lots of room for the investigation that comes back, and any work done by our accountability officers to report back to us any further refinement of any of those policies. We even have a whistleblower policy. I don't think it was robust enough to kick into action and help Councillor Fillion. I asked questions about the report that I understand will be made public because earlier I wanted someone to demonstrate how very skewed a report can be when it wants to be skewed. I'm standing in this chamber right now speaking to the members in the way I'm instructed to do so. There's my chair. I speak to you only through her permission, and she has to be able to see my face. We're instructed when we get our council orientation to know where the camera is that covers us, because that's the way our residents will see us. And staff are used to knowing that if I wanted to ask a question now of Ms. Gray about transportation, I would still be facing you, and she would be behind me, and she would be fine with that. Those are our rules of order. Those are our code of conduct for how we respectfully conduct business in this room. And those are the rules of code of conduct that ought to have been followed in that room. But sometimes in our smaller boards, we relax. We get a little informal, and before you know it, we've slipped up. We're either not following the code of conduct, or in fact, we're beginning to misunderstand each other's actions. That's what the code of conduct is for, so that everybody understands the rules and understands each other's actions. And then we end up by relaxing the rules with this prejudicial opinion of behaviors that were in fact quite respectful. He was addressing the chair of a board. That's why I highlighted that when I was asking questions earlier, and now that report has been voted public, I voted against, but it will be made public. And I hope that the community will realize they're looking at a report that has a particular slant and a view. But I also know this, the Mayor's motion today hands it over to senior staff to commission, oversee, and finally deliver to us that independent third-party review. And I think we demonstrated why that's necessary. I left here last night thinking, we've got to dissolve the board, and a whistleblower has to be ready for that. You bring your information forward to the important authority. You make sure they're protecting you. They should be protecting you earlier so that a prejudicial report like the one that's about to be made public would never have been created, should never have been written. That's what whistleblower protection, had it been employed earlier, would have accounted for. But that being said, you make sure that protection policies are covering you. You come to the larger body and you let governance resolve the matter. It means the whistleblower at some point will relinquish control of the matter because it is the will of the body to fix it, and it is the responsibility of the body to fix it. And we demonstrated here this morning why we couldn't right now reconstitute immediately a 7-member board, put some councillors back on, put some citizens on. We all know each other. We know too many people in all of these many reports. When the results come forward, they have to be fully impartial. They cannot be judged in any way by ourselves, by our community, or even by our friends upstairs in the media gallery. This is the only way that that happens. The whistleblower and the body that is here to protect him, council, now hands to this Board of Supervision the task of bringing us back a review. And we will together decide the results and the consequences of the resulting report.
Thank you.
That's the best way forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the motions put forward by the Mayor. I think it's a fair suggestion to ask the Board of Directors to have a leave of absence. It either has to be all board members stay or all board members leave while the investigation is happening. We don't know which board member is involved in what. If we don't have enough evidence to decide that today, either all of the board members stay on or all of the board members are given a leave of absence or take a leave of absence, asked to take a leave of absence. I do feel that if the board continues in their role, there will definitely be some sort of a complication in terms of investigation. Though we know that it's going to happen independently, the board is going to be the ultimate head of the organization. The board has supervisory role over all the staff in the organization. So when an organization is under, this investigation is going on, if the board is still in control of what's happening, the board oversees the senior staff, does their performance review, etc. It is not going to be an ideal situation. So hopefully this will be done soon enough so that we won't need to have an interim board for too long. And hopefully, the members who've served well can return, if possible, to the role. But at this point of time, I think the best thing to do is to have a leave of absence so that the investigation can take place. Though I'm not quite convinced that there's only one way to do it by calling it the interim board. I don't know if there's another way to name it as an interim supervisory role or some sort of thing. But I'm definitely in support of that. I also want to say thanks to, through you, Madam Speaker, to Councillor Fillion for raising this and the courage and the kind of determination he has shown in this. And this my decision to support the leave of absence of the board is in no way reflective of the courage that he has shown. And I would like to comment him on that. I also would like to thank the Auditor General. I know there were some questions raised about what was the appropriate time to be getting involved. I think it's sometimes better for us to be proactive. If nothing comes out as wrong, it's okay. It's okay for us to be safe than sorry. So I think it wasn't important enough of an issue for the Auditor General to be involved in and to raise it with us. So I definitely appreciate the work that she has done. So finally, I also think that Integrity Commissioner and the Lobbyist Registrar are two amazing positions that we have to have oversight, and in a situation like this, we definitely need to get them involved. So I'll be supporting both Councillor Holiday's and Councillor Davis' motions as well. I'm looking forward to a speedy resolution of the issue so that the board can go back to normalcy and we can find a way to continue the amazing work that we do in the city through our organizations and agencies, boards and commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. We've had a number of points of view spoken to at this meeting, and I just wanted to address some of them because I think on this one, more than anything we've debated yet this term, it's critical we find the right line, the right path forward. First, I think we've heard a number of different views about what went on in terms of the evaluation of the land and how it was done, and did members of the TPA do their job, and we've heard a whole narrative around that. And it's important that we've got some confidential advice about how to get more clear answers on that piece. And that's very important. It's also critical, and this is why I think what the mayor has done is of such great value, that while that's happening, members of the public are absolutely clear in their mind that none of us is interfering with that investigation. And that's important because we've had different narratives. Some members of this council say one thing happened, other members of this council say another thing happened. There's a dispute about it. Let's take us out of that and have an absolutely clear investigation of the facts. That's why I think what the mayor is offering in terms of temporarily suspending membership of the board and appointing a small group to oversee the parking authority while they do the investigation is critical. And I can't speak to all the reasons why it's the TPA that does the investigation or why the work of the Auditor General isn't sufficient for all of our purposes, but it absolutely is the case that we need that work done. And we need to have it done in a way that's above reproach. And also in a way that can't be used for political purposes. The Speaker already had to call Councillor Mammoliti to order for remarks he was making about Councillor Fillion in this debate. Already there's an effort to try to say, you can't listen to so-and-so's version. You can't listen to so-and-so's version. There's already an effort to try to taint the interpretation of what happened. And that's why it's important no member of this council can be seen to be leading the investigation. That's why I'm afraid I can't support Councillor Matlow's motion. But there's something else here that's really critical that we have to turn our minds to. In the course of this investigation, it has been revealed to us and the public that a former member of Toronto City Council, a lobbyist now, got $1 million, $1 million in fees from one public entity, the Emery Village BIA, to lobby another public entity, the Toronto Parking Authority. That shocks the mind. Former Councillor Paul Sutherland, it's been reported in the Toronto Star and elsewhere, a former member of this council was paid by the Emery Village BIA $1 million in public money to lobby another public corporation of the City of Toronto. I need to know what was going on that BIA, that they were making that kind of an expense. I don't think there's a single person who voted for any one of you who thinks that a former politician should be getting that kind of remuneration from a public agency to lobby another public agency. And that's why Councillor Davis's motion is as important as anything else that you've had in front of you this term. We need to absolutely make it clear to members of the public that we do not condone that, and we want to understand how that happened and what we have to do to make sure it never happens again. So, the final thing I wanted to say in closing is, while I know Councillor Fillion has made, and I think will make a plea that he should remain on the board, I think that the ability of some voices in this council to say that that would somehow taint or color or interfere with or raise questions about the independence of the investigation is sufficient to my mind to say, no, Councillor Fillion, despite the fact that you have done heroic work here, we cannot give the people who've been putting roadblocks up all along another excuse. It has to be without your participation at this point. Thank you for the work you've done to bring it this far, and I hope that we get full answers in front of the public as a result of the work you did.
Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I would also like to rise and thank the Auditor General for her work. I think it's very telling. The report was extremely revealing. And it's not even just the the amount of work that went into pulling off the investigation, but rather the difficulties in putting together the information to thread together the case to sort of make it and present it to us in a very comprehensive way. I recognize that this is probably very difficult, Madam Speaker, for a number of members in the chambers. It certainly is for myself. We've all had dealings with the Toronto Parking Authority. I hold the staff of the Parking Authority in the greatest esteem. I've never had any, and this is not to impugn anyone's reputations, but I've never had anything but the most professional relationship with them. Always responsive when called upon, and always extremely informative. So I am surprised to hear about this. I've been fairly quiet, reading the reports and also listening to the comments. But I also recognize that we have we have an obligation that we have to continue to undertake, and we have to uphold the interests of the public, which is why I will be supporting the motion from the mayor. It is also a motion that I had been advocating for when in conversations with other councillors. I felt that the best thing to do is to start with not so much a clean slate on the board, but rather just to ensure that the process of investigation moving forward was going to have the greatest amount of integrity and clarity. And in no way should it actually be a reflection on any of the performance of the board members existing or past, and I'm not sure about the Emery Village BIA and the present or the past, but I just want to speak directly to perhaps the sentiment of my friend and colleague, Councillor Filion. I recognize that it's not easy speaking up, especially when sometimes you feel like you're not being heard. I certainly do appreciate how much courage it took to be able to rise up and say something, because oftentimes it's a lot easier to say nothing. Saying nothing doesn't get you into trouble. Saying nothing doesn't get you enemies. Saying nothing keeps you in a safe place. But that's not the kind of person that he is, and it's certainly not the kind of person that I know him to be. So of course he would have said something, and of course he would have been persistent, because once he realized that he needed to share with others what he has seen so that he can shine a light on the matter, he was able to do just that. Because I've only ever known him to be operating under light. And so I want to thank him for that. And also, with respect to process and price, there's been a lot of talk about how did you arrive at the price, what type of process did you take, was the process the standard process, were all the rules followed. I think that there's more conversations and more investigation that will be had, and that will also be revealed in time. If the auditor's report is correct and the findings are going to be held up, the next wave of investigation would certainly be able to pull that together for us. With respect to the role of lobbyists at City Hall, we spend a lot of time being asked to consider matters, and oftentimes I have felt that there have been occasions where perhaps we didn't need to have so much contact. Send me the information that you're looking for. I will give you a response either by a meeting in the presence of staff or perhaps correspondence in writing. But we recognize that lobbyists have a role to play, and certainly they do. But lobbyists and consultants also have agencies. They have to particularly be clear on who they're serving. And in this case, they were serving so many people that it was very muddy on who they were serving, and perhaps the service was to themselves. So I look forward to the follow-up reports that will be coming from the Integrity Commissioner, as well as the Lobbyist Registrar, and I think that this is certainly not the last of this conversation, and this is not the last time that we'll be speaking about this matter in the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fragadakis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two motions, and they're both amending the mayor's motions. The first is that we're adding the words "without remuneration" to the leave of absence, and I'll speak to that in a moment. And the second is that City Council requests the City Manager to review whether the existing whistleblowing and reprisal protection provisions that apply to directors of city agencies are adequate, and if necessary, report on ways and means of enhancing them. For the first motion, I think that it's consistent with motion C3 or 3C, because the new chair of the board and the board members will also not be getting any additional compensation. It's only fair that the members of the board on leave should also not be getting any remuneration since they won't be discharging their duties during that time. And as for my second motion, after having looked at the City of Toronto bylaw 993-2014, which is the public service bylaw, disclosure of wrongdoing and reprisal protection, it doesn't seem that that actually applies to members of boards. What does actually apply to members of boards is conduct standards for members of local boards. Any reprisal or threat of reprisal against a complainant or anyone for providing relevant information to the Integrity Commissioner is therefore prohibited. So I find that to be a bit problematic. It should include all accountability officers, and I hope that that's what my second motion will reveal. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Auditor General for her work on this matter. I have to say I was very disappointed by the letter by Mackenzie Barristers, in particular from the very beginning at the introduction, where it says that you retained me to provide guidance in responding to an anticipated Auditor General's report regarding a real estate transaction in respect of a property municipally known as 1111 Arrow Road in Toronto. I find this rather disappointing in light of the fact that yesterday we learned from the Auditor General that the TPA staff in a briefing with her actually agreed to her findings. And then on the 29th of June, last week, this letter was drafted that actually speaks to some things that I find troubling, in particular on page 16 of 17, where it says that the Auditor General's second report depicts Councillor Fillion and herself as officials whose interventions prevented the TPA from overpaying for their property. As will be apparent from this report, in my view, this rather self-congratulatory conclusion is in no way justified by the facts. I'm actually very disappointed in that. I don't think that the work of the Auditor General should be described as self-congratulatory. Anyways, I look forward to the findings of the third-party investigation, and when this matter comes before Council, I will read that with great interest.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I've listened carefully to the Auditor General, and I thank her for the research that she's brought to our attention. I read the Mackenzie report very carefully, and I listened as carefully as I could to the debate in camera and in public on this particular issue. And the conclusion I've reached, Speaker, is that there are a lot of moving parts to this issue, and I would hope that the investigation proceeds less with enthusiasm and more with caution and precision. There's a potential minefield of lawsuits out there, and they should be avoided as much as possible. And Speaker, with respect to the motions that are before us, I support the Mayor's recommendations. If my memory serves me correctly, we have replaced boards on several occasions over the years. We did it with, I think, Casa Loma. We did it with TCHC, and there might have been a third one as well. So I don't think there should be any problem with the Mayor's motions. With respect to, and I certainly support motion 1D, I think the level of procedural governance should be visited in our agencies, boards, and commissions, and frankly elevated in boards that it's found lacking, Speaker. I support Councillor Holliday's motion. I don't support Councillor Matlow's, and I think I would be repeating the arguments of others who've indicated why they wouldn't be supporting that particular motion. I think because Councillor Fill-In is going to be one of the players that is going to be investigated, I think that he might be in a position of conflict were he on a TPA board that received the investigative report and had to pass judgment on it. With respect to Councillor Davis's motions, I understand where she's coming from, Speaker. But I think that perspective would be incorporated in the investigation, as I understand it, as presented in camera. I think it's going to be wide-reaching. I don't think that there's any player that won't have his or her role examined in great detail. So, Speaker, those are my remarks, and I look forward very much to the report when it comes before us.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I spoke in camera, but I will speak those remarks again in public on the same issue. We, in this place, find ourselves having to make a decision after staff have dealt with things, staff have done the investigations, and staff are ready to report. We're never asked to be engaged. We're never asked to write reports. Unfortunately, for us, it is not like the federal or the provincial system where a committee goes out, asks questions, does findings, and then they write the report along with staff. This is quite the opposite. And here we have members of the Toronto Parking Authority. Staff have gone out there, done the work, and one board member feels like saying, well, I don't like this, what you've done, and I'm going to squeal to the Auditor General before this comes to the board for us to vote on it. And all of a sudden, the Auditor General goes in, and we have two competing reports. Madam Speaker, I think that it's time that we look at the practices that we have and we engage. And I say this wholeheartedly, because if we look at the practices that we have and we engage and we work along with staff versus having to wait back for staff to write reports and report to us, and if some points in times we want to be engaged in the process and we say to staff, can we come to the consultation meetings, and we get it back in writing, sorry, you cannot attend. This is where all these trouble starts with. I will not be supporting the motion by Councillor Stephen Holladay. I think that we have checks in place for the Auditor General, the Integrity Commissioner to do things. I will certainly be not supporting the one by Janet Davis, Councillor Davis, and I will be closely looking at the Mayor John Tory's report. But I say again, unless we do a wholesale change and unless we include councillors in writing the reports, in being there, and do the heavy lifting along with staff, I don't think the culture is going to change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Karygiannis. Our next speaker is the Speaker, Speaker Nunziata.
Thank you. I will be supporting the mayor's motions, and I will be supporting actually all the motions except for Councillor Matlow's motion. The reason I wanted to speak, and I'm not going to speak for 5 minutes, but this has been very difficult, this issue. We've been debating and asking questions now for 2 days, and in camera and as well as public. But what was really disturbing, and the reason I wanted to speak, because the letter that, the confidential letter from the solicitor from Mackenzie that was made public, the whole report, and if you read the report, is attacking one member of council as a whistleblower, and that really disturbs me. And I mean, it's the worst report I've ever seen and ever read. I don't know who this lawyer is, but he's a lousy lawyer.
Don't say that.
I hope
He may be sued.
I hope
He may be sued.
I hope we didn't pay him. But the reason I'm making
Madam Speaker, I'm going to have to hold your time. I have
Okay, I'll retract the
I think you're
comment.
talking about a point of personal privilege. Oh, thank you.
I'll retract
Thank
the
you, Madam
comment.
Speaker.
But as far as a whistleblower, I mean, first of all, I commend Councillor Fillion for being a whistleblower. I was a whistleblower in 1991. And I was attacked, Councillor Mihevik, you will remember this. I was attacked by members of council, even by the media. This went on for a few years, and I was so intimidated. People were threatening me. But at the end of the day, I was right. So, Councillor Fillion, you did the right thing. When you feel, if any member of council or any board member feels that there's something wrong, even though you're not sure of it, if you bring it forward at the end of the day, right or wrong, you've done the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just wanted to rise to lend my support to Mayor Tory's motions and raise some caution about Councillor Fragadas's motion without the amendment of without remuneration. I think a comment that was made earlier that there's going to be a flurry of lawsuits over this, and I think without a consultation with our Human Resources Department and looking into individual employee contracts with severances and the details over suspension, I think it would be very irresponsible for us to decide at this stage whether...
Councillor, I'm going to hold your time for a second. I have a point of personal privilege. I've stopped your clock. Councillor Fragedakis, hang on a sec. I have to find you there. Proceed.
Sorry, my personal privilege was not really about my name, but that's another point. So the remuneration is for members of the board, Councillor Pasternak, Madam Speaker, that it's not about members of city staff at the parking authority, it's about members of the board. So just a clarification for Councillor Pasternak.
Well, I'll read it to you. City Council placed the members of the Toronto Parking Authority Board on leave of absence without remuneration. My assumption would be senior executives who would also sit on the board who are...
No.
Who also would have remuneration.
Councillor, the issue is to if you're speaking to the motion, to stick to the motion. You are veering into some recommendations that I think are contents of the report that is remaining confidential.
With that being said, I just wanted to say that my dealings with the Toronto Parking Authority were always very positive. They took a great interest in some of the ideas and concerns we had in Ward 10. Lauren Percival was a true professional in dealing with us, and I think he's been credited and commended for many of the good things that he did. It is very sad that we are caught up in this mess and a war of documents and motions before us. That being said, I think we have to take the actions before us to disband the board, have a more thorough investigation, and look at it more closely. But I did want to make sure I rose to accentuate the positive, that my personal dealings with the TPA had always been positive, true professionals, and I think they did an excellent job in many of the projects that they were involved in.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to begin, well, first of all, I will be supporting the mayor's motions. I think that an investigation and a thorough investigation of a particular transaction is good. I'm not sure that it's enough, because I believe that a more comprehensive investigation needs to be done in a situation like this, to be fair to all parties involved. I want to echo the comments of the previous speaker, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Kelly, I think I along the same line, and Councillor Campbell. I think I personally believe that when we examine a particular transaction and there are some red flags that for whatever reason signal impending doom, it's logical, I guess, to jump to conclusion that we see some disaster occurring in the next few months. We think we should somehow intervene and stop the process that the TPA has been used to, or the standard practices that the TPA has employed in the past, and let's stop it because we don't see a very good outcome. And that's fine to jump to that conclusion. However, there is nothing that the investigation will show that in fact jumping to that conclusion might have been premature. In fact, a 60-day clause plus a 30-day before closing would have been sufficient time to allow Mr. Persico, who I believe is very competent, certainly in my interaction with him and the TPA when I was on the Budget Committee and as Budget Chief, were very positive experiences, and that's why I say I echo the comments of the previous speaker. It's unfortunate that we have to find ourselves in such a predicament. But that being said, I mean, we're all sort of caught up in a situation where we would like to see the right thing done. And to do it the right way, I think, is where the mayor's motions really stem from. He's basically saying this is the right way to probably do the type of investigation that is needed through the general manager. But let me conclude by saying at the end of the day, when all of the reviews are done, I would agree with Councillor Campbell and say that the unfortunate set of circumstances we find ourselves in will point out that in fact no wrongdoing was done. That's not to say that someone jumping to the conclusion that they anticipate wrongdoing happening is necessarily wrong. All I'm saying is I don't believe that wrongdoing will be demonstrated in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to start by saying I think the TTC is under maybe about 8 or 9 current audits by the Auditor General, and the thought that we would ever then hire an outside firm to rebut the audit findings we receive and present them to council, sorry, not purple, is just beyond even description. And the fact that that became really the gist of what we debated for hours today is even more bizarre. And how that even procedurally was able to happen is beyond me. And so the debate today, which is, let's be clear, it's about a transaction that the auditor investigated. It's not about whether Councillor Fillion was a jerk in his pursuit of this transaction, or in this rebuttal, or a hero about it. And yet that became the whole conversation pivoted on this. And there's a narrative like there's 2 sides to this story. No. His conduct in the pursuit, whether heroic or otherwise, is not what we're debating here today. There was a clear finding by our Auditor General that found things and processes and procedures and policies not followed, and that's what's in front of us today. Yet somehow we've shifted, and we're all kind of trying to be the judge and or jury about one board member's conduct and how he should have or might have conducted that. And I just think that's really sad and disappointing. And if anyone wonders, and we kind of hear the term whistleblower thrown around a lot today, and I'm glad that I was almost going to call her the mayor, former mayor of York, the forgotten city of York, who really set the standard for what the bravery it takes to be a whistleblower. If anyone thinks that this isn't going to put a chill and a cool on that people's willingness to do that in our agencies and board commission, our debate today, it will. I mean, look what Councillor Fillion has had to go through with reports like this, the debate today. Why would anyone ever come forward and point something out to any one of our accountability officers in any shape or form? And this debate and a lot of these motions will have that effect, and to the detriment of the city. And so I think that what's in front of us today is troubling. The report that should be the focus of this discussion is the 75-page report by the Auditor General. I know many members in this chamber have read it. For those who haven't, I encourage you to do so. I encourage the people up there to read that report, because that's the discussion and debate that's in front of us today. That's what these motions should be about. That's what this debate should be about. It's not about whether you've had good dealings with the parking authority in the past. We all have. That's great. They're professionals. We know that. That's not what this is about. It's not about the conduct of one particular board member. It's not about that either. It's about this transaction. It's about the irregularities around this transaction that should be alarming for all of us in this chamber and all of residents of this city. And that's what the focus should be. And it's disappointing the way it's shifted over the course of the debate today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. So is that it for the speakers? All right.
I got one more, sorry. Give Sean Kelly
Councillor Fillion.
No, Councillor Mammoliti.
Councillor Mammoliti. Oh, flip a coin. Go ahead.
Whoever's on there, I'll accept, Madam Chair.
Okay. Somebody has to go first. If not, I'll cut both of you off. No, that's not the way it works, Councillor Mammoliti. Councillor Fillion to speak.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I have a motion that City Council requests the City Manager to retain the services of a qualified expert in board governance to review and evaluate the actions of the Toronto Parking Authority Board in this matter and report to City Council at the appropriate time. I support all the other motions. I'd like to thank Councillor Matlow for his, and I'll talk a bit about why I wanted to stay on the board, still like to stay on the board. And I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes, Madam Speaker, but I'm going to ask if you'll give me a bit of indulgence. First of all, it's my understanding that the members of the board would not be involved in the investigation. If I thought otherwise, I would not ask to be on. The main reason that I'm asking to be on is because I am concerned. God knows it is not because it is fun to be on the Toronto Parking Authority or that I've had a good time there. It is because of my whistleblower status and my concern about how I have been treated in this by some people, and certainly I appreciate the comments of a lot of members of council and a lot of members of staff privately. But it really does discourage anyone else from doing the same. And there's a reason why from 1991, when you were a whistleblower, Madam Speaker, and I think Baz Balkison about 17 years ago, I think there's a reason why nobody comes forward, because it is really not fun to do it. And the reason that I agreed to have the report from Mr. McKenzie distributed in public unredacted is because I'm counting on intelligent readers to look at that in conjunction with the Auditor General's 76-page report and understand what it is, be able to see it for exactly what it is, and what happens when you challenge something when somebody is doing something they shouldn't be doing. They don't go, oh, thank you for telling me that I was doing something I shouldn't have been. They come after you. And one of the ways that the Parking Authority Board came after me was to hire a lawyer to do that. And I think that's self-evident from anybody who reads the report. I think it's self-evident. So just to quickly go through the chronology, in May, this transaction came before the Parking Authority Board as an added item in camera. There was no business case for buying the property. I asked for one. And there was no appraisals. I asked for one. The board, nobody on the board agreed with me that we should have those things before we proceeded to ask the staff to develop an agreement of purchase and sale. I was told those things would be provided before the agreement of purchase and sale came back. They weren't. On July 28th, again, as an added item in camera, again with no appraisal, still no business case, an agreement of purchase and sale came forward. Again, I was the only board member who thought there was anything wrong with that. I was outvoted unanimously. Following that, I started saying to the staff, you'd promised me this information, where is it? And it was, yes, I was persistent, and it was around the time that I was persistent that there were stories started circulating. Oh, he's very difficult. He's stepping over the line. He's being abusive of staff. I was being abusive of staff for asking them for information and being persistent in that. On August 19th, an agreement of purchase and sale was signed, still with no appraisal, allegedly with no appraisal, and with no business case. I asked to go in and examine the file. At first I was told I couldn't. I couldn't go in and look at the file. Then finally I was allowed to go in and look at the file, and the staff member sort of took papers out selectively, but there was hardly anything in the file. What wasn't in the file, and what nobody had told me up to that time, was that there was an existing appraisal, and this is in the information provided for the Auditor General, and that appraisal was for $7.5 million, but that information was deliberately kept from me. Again, there was no business case. I was told there was no appraisal, and it was at that point that I contacted the Auditor General.
Councillor Fillion, can you wrap it up, please?
I'll try to wrap it up. So this went forward to the board meeting where the Auditor General presented her evidence that what was happening wasn't right. What did the board do? Not a thing, except pass a motion to hire a lawyer, and then we know the results of that. So that's what happened in this instance to somebody who was trying to say, wait a minute, let's have some information here before we make a decision.
Councillor Fillion, can you wrap? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We do have a question for you from Councillor Karygiannis. 3 minutes clarification of the motion.
Indeed, Madam Chair, and the motion says that we need to retain a qualified expert in board governors. I'm just wondering, Madam Chair, don't we have enough qualified people in this chamber for us to do this, and with the staff? Do we need to go outside and spend money?
Is that a question to me? I asked that question because if we did have somebody who could do it, that would have been fine with me. I was told by the clerk's department that they couldn't do it, and the city manager, I believe, is fine with this motion.
Do we have a figure what this is going to cost us?
I do not.
Not more than 2.5.
So we have a problem.
Probably a lot less than what it would cost us not to.
So we have a problem
do this kind
about
of work.
spending, but we don't have a problem about spending about governance when we have in-house experts.
Well,
Okay, thank you,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Davis, clarification of the
just
motion.
Wondered if you could tell us why you think we need more expertise on board governance, and maybe use your example.
Well, I think this, Councillor Carmichael Greb talked the other day about the director's program, which I'm also taking, and which is extremely useful. Even if you've been a long-time councillor, you learn a lot of stuff. I think what happened here is kind of a classic case in how to not handle a matter. And so I think what happened here needs to be reviewed. I don't believe there is any other motion that deals with what happened at the board. I think the other motions, both public and private, deal with other matters. And I also understand, and I appreciate the comments of people who said they won't support Councillor Matlow's motion, and I understand their reasons, and that perhaps this takes the place of that in some ways.
Thank you. Councillor Mammoliti to speak.
Madam Speaker, I have no motions. I do feel obligated to stand up and speak about something that we haven't spoken about, and that's the community and what the community has lost out of all of this. We have gone through a process over the last 20 years, 4 different resolutions coming to council, 4 different directives. This is no different. Asking for this particular square, this particular objective by the BIA to be placed in 4 different spots. And every time they abide by the wishes of the policies at City Hall and the wishes of City Hall, someone comes up with bad news and delivers it to the community, and they can't have it. In this particular case, there was a bit of good news with the LRT, believe it or not, even though I voted opposed to the LRT. I even voted opposed. I got to look at the record, but when it came forward, this whole plan. But contrary to what my community was telling me, they felt comfortable in moving forward with the Metrolinx commitments to pay for certain things on this site, like the bicycle path lanes, like the bicycle share program, like the square, and we may have lost out from a whole ton of money because of this particular report and this initiative, and now more feedback to come. We may have lost out in millions of dollars from Metrolinx because of this. And yet again, York West has sat out because of another plan that City Hall says no to. I don't know how you feel, but I feel for my community. They deserve it. What's wrong with Jane and Finch? What's wrong with us having what everybody else wants and desires? What's wrong with us getting the same sorts of infrastructure money that the downtown part of the city gets and everybody else gets? Those are questions that I have to ask as a local councillor. And I have no issues at all moving forward, talking to anyone about how the process was set in place. And the report that came in front of all of you, and I think it was unanimous at the time, amongst all of you, you voted in favor of it, right? And and that report said that the TPA would be a partner in this, and so would the BIA. And with those 2 partners, it went forward. And it went forward to the TPA. And Mr. Mayor can remember as well, the last meeting that we had before that report came, the amount of enthusiasm from the community, over 600 people at that meeting while the mayor was there saying, yes, we deserve it as well. That report came forward, and then it went to the TPA. I sat on the TPA. I was happy it was there, and I was glad it was moving forward. I took the lead of staff there, and we, as a board, understood that we had to go through a process. That process was underway. And then we heard from city staff. Not the 2 city staff that are in the report. We heard from some women in offices. We heard from staff of the TPA that complained to the HR department about one councillor who went in, not as a whistleblower in my opinion. I know that some people want to make him feel like he is today, but more like a headhunter, more like someone that has gone in and he's telling all of these women that are working behind the desks that he's going to call the police on them. That he's going to call the police on them.
Mr. Mammoliti?
It's in the report.
Yeah.
It's in the report.
Not only not in the report, but it is completely untrue. It is completely untrue. So I would ask Councillor Mammoliti to withdraw that.
No, it's in the report. It's in the report.
Councillor Mammoliti, can you withdraw that? When Councillor Fillion spoke, he did not mention your name. He did not attack you, and I don't expect you to attack Councillor Fillion when you're speaking.
I'm only saying that as a board member, we were hearing from the staff at the board, and while everyone's questioning what was
Can you please
written...
retract the comment, please?
I'm not retracting what's in the report. What's in the report is that he was saying that he's going to call the police on people.
You're talking, that's in copy of the report that the outside solicitor reported.
Yes.
And I commented on the outside solicitor.
Well, okay, so you did.
So,
But listen, in my,
so can you please continue and not, and can you retract your comment you made to Councillor Fillion?
you're asking me to retract what's in the report?
Retract the comment that you just made about Councillor Fillion.
If it's not in the report, then I retract it. If it's in the report, then I can't. It's in the report.
Councillor Mammoliti, please.
Madam Speaker, it's in the report. If it's not in the report, I retract it. If it's in the report and it's written in front of us, how can I retract that? So as a board member, we're hearing this dialogue come to us, and in the midst of the Auditor General coming in front of the board, we've got staff at the TPA that are literally crying and worried that someone's going to call the police on them. And so the TPA board, after the discussion with the Auditor General, decided that it's probably best to get another opinion. And who said it best was Councillor Kelly a few minutes ago. You've got a very legal document here, as well as the Auditor General report. And anything else that goes forward here has to take into account a legal document that has legal opinions and speaks to very clear messaging around people that are hired by the TPA and by this city. And if you're not cautious with this, it will come back to haunt us. This isn't political anymore. This is real. Okay, so you can laugh all you want, Councillor Burnside. Let them come back with whatever they need to come back with, and we'll decide later whether or not we're right or we're wrong. At the end of the day, I got 30 seconds. You gave it to Councillor
Giving him the
Fillion.
same amount of time I gave to Fillion, I promised.
The misinformation needs to be, there's no question about it, needs to be answered. There's a whole bunch of misinformation, and we'll find out what that is as we go along. And I swear to you, if I can move today and get away with it, to expropriate this land, to give this community what they've been waiting for 20 years, I would. But I'm going to wait for any reports to come back.
Thank you.
And I will be back with a motion to try and expropriate the land.
Your time is up. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I promise you I will not take more than 5 minutes. I will be supporting the mayor's motions. I think they are a prudent way forward to resolve this matter. I will be supporting Councillor Holliday's motions as well in their entirety with no amendments. And I will be supporting Councillor Fillion's motion. Those are the most important aspects of this whole thing that I'm going to be supporting today. I, like many here, are confused and not convinced that there's necessarily a villain or a hero. And I think it's going to be important to come to a conclusion on what the heck happened here and make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think that the motions I've said I will be supporting are the important ones that are going to get those answers for us. And I feel the other motions are just sideline and noise for political gain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor, before we go to Councillor Thompson, I'm going to acknowledge Councillor Matlow. Councillor Matlow, you would like to move to withdraw your motion?
Yeah, thank you. In light of Councillor Fillion's motion, I'd like to withdraw the motion that I moved to amend the mayor's motion.
Okay. All in favor of withdrawing Councillor Matlow's motion? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I just wanted to rise because I want to support the mayor's motion. And I want to remind members that this transaction requirement or request or direction to the TPA came from Council. It's my understanding that Council wanted to acquire the lands for the community, as been stated. I have sat and listened to the in-camera, I've sat and listened to the out-of-camera, the in-council commentary and so on. It seems to me that there are a lot of confusion, and certainly the information and the matter has been brought forward by the councillor, and that's fine. But what it appears to me is that obviously the procedures of the TPA leaves me a little bit confounded with respect to how they transact real estate transactions. One, I don't know if it's the nature of the business that they're in, but from my accounting of this, and when I see the information that we have here about sort of the valuation and how they've arrived at it and what they start at and where they land, it seems to me in one report it says that they'd land at the same place that the Auditor General has also stated that she believed would be the fair market value. So it's really confusing, and so we have at odds a lot of information, not all the details in terms of facts. So I think the mayor's motion is very helpful and instructive to ensure that we have a third party that will examine, as well as to ensure that the board that is going to be in place that will lead the policy and directive for the TPA is free of any involvement of members who are there now. I think that's essential in terms of moving this forward, and I'm very happy that Councillor Matlow has withdrawn his particular motion. Clearly, there is a lot of stuff here, and it is very perplexing and confusing. And I think that it is obviously not something that council or councillors should be investigating, and that's why a third party with the ability to bring forward back to council the appropriate information that will actually help us. I think that at this particular point in time, and I know that it's been stated, Councillor DiTiano talked about villains or hero. I want to get that fact at the later date. We will then see whether or not there was a real issue. Talking about the role of governance, I've just gone through that course with a number of my colleagues. I understand what the roles and responsibility of board members are. It seems to me that a lot of things happen as part of this particular board with the activities of members. That's fine. I think that the Auditor General and her work and her ability to take a look at this, that's fine as well, and we ought to thank her, because in the past, as I've been made aware, when we wanted something done by other Auditor Generals, we've been told that, well, let's take a look at the work plan. Let's take a look to see if it fits in the work plan, whether or not they actually have time to do that. She's obviously been able to bring this in and incorporate that with respect to her work plan and doing the work. Whether or not the detailed information that she had, or the information that she had received and the report that she has brought together, which I'm certainly not criticizing, I'm happy that she brought this report, but it appears that there's only some information that she's received when we contrast that with respect to this other report, this McKenzie report. And I'm not necessarily happy with the report either, but there are things in there that we have to obviously take from that report and bring that forward along with the Auditor General's report. So the Mayor's motion is very helpful. There are a couple of other motions that I'll be supporting, but I won't be supporting many others. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, so if we can put the order on the screen, please, for members of council.
Suspense.
Okay, we're ready? Okay, if we can put the motion on the screen. Motion 1A by the mayor. Recorded vote.
Councillor Carroll, please.
Councillor Bearmaker, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Motion 1B, Recorded vote.
Councillor Palacio, please, and Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor DeGiorgio, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Motion 5A by Councillor Fragadakis. Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please.
Councillor Mihevik, please.
Councillor Wong Tam, please, and Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza, please.
The motion carries 30 to 10.
Motion C by Mayor Tory. As amended. Recorded vote.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Karygiannis, please, and Councillor Perks.
Motion 1C carries, as amended, carries 40 in favor. It's unanimous.
Motion 1D by the mayor revised. Recorded vote.
Councillor Karygiannis, please, and thank you. Councillor Layton.
The motion carries 39 to 1.
Motion 4B by Councillor Davis. Recorded vote.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Perruzza, Councillor McMahon.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion carries 34 to 6.
Motion 2 by Councillor Holliday. Recorded vote. As amended.
Councillor Mihevik, please. Councillor Crisanti, thank you.
The motion carries 39 to 1.
Motion 4A by Councillor Davis. Recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor, please, and thank you. Councillor Layton.
Councillor DiCiano and Councillor, thank you.
The motion carries 39-1.
Motion 5B by Councillor Fragadakis, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DiGiorgio.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Motion 6 by Councillor Fillion, recorded vote.
Councillor Carroll, please.
Councillor Ford, please.
Councillor Carroll, please, when you're ready.
You have to do item.
The motion carries 33-7.
Okay, item is amended, recorded vote.
Councillor Davis, please. Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
The item as amended carries unanimously, 40 in favor.
Now, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, since we dealt with both items CA 17.2, the Civic Appointments Committee, you have a motion at this time?
Yes, in expectation of this outcome, I have a motion that consideration of the item be deferred until such time as the interim board of the Toronto Parking Authority is replaced.
Okay. On the motion by Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, all in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to our next item now. That was timed. The top of page 3, EX 26.1, which is the proposed King Street Transit pilot. Do we have questions to staff? Okay. Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong.
I'll suffer through it. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have questions of Ms. Gray, if I might ask her. So during this pilot project next year, can you, and I ask this only within the context of if you drive along Wellington Street right now, this morning, for example, there's all sorts of construction going on there. And so I'm wondering during this pilot project, what construction projects are going on either Front Street, Wellington Street, Dundas Street, or Queen Street that might make traffic even worse?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we are working continually through the MCIC on the coordination of the 2018 program. The reason why we're proposing an October start date
Madam
is...
Chair.
Okay, hold on, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, can I have quiet, please?
And I don't know what those letters mean, so maybe you can help me with that.
Okay, hold on. Can I have some quiet, please?
Yeah, unplanned work and private development, right.
Okay, continue.
We are continuing to work to ensure that all planned work for transportation and Toronto Water is not in conflict on those parallel corridors for 2018. Those that we don't have control over, emergency work and private development work, we will continue to manage as we do to minimize those conflicts.
So may I ask you again, do you know if there are any substantial works being done by any city departments or any agencies in the city on any of those streets? Do you know that?
Through you, Madam Speaker, all that we know that is in the proposed 2018 work program that we're working to coordinate through MCIC is that we are not putting any planned work by transportation, Toronto Water, other planned work that we have to be in conflict with the pilot on parallel routes.
I see. Can I ask, I see Mr. Byford is here, so we have the Toronto Transit Commission, so I know one of the projects that they're working right now on where they've got Wellington blocked off, I think, to one lane, because I think they're doing they might have been doing some TTC work. My question is, does the TTC plan any work that is going to block any of the streets that I just mentioned next year during the pilot project?
Commissioner, not that I'm aware of. That's one of the things that we checked before we proposed the pilot. Clearly, we need to make sure that the adjacent streets run smoothly, so that's something I can confirm.
I see. So then, thank you very much. So then my next question is, do we know if on any of those streets in the length of the pilot project, how many construction staging areas there are, on what streets? I know this is a hard question, but when you have to drive on those streets every single day, right? How many applications will there be? Can you give us some sense of how many lanes are going to be blocked during the pilot project?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we have instituted a no-fly zone in other instances, like with the York Bay Young ramp, and we're talking about instituting a no-fly zone in this instance as well, where we would not have additional planned work come into the area for the reasons that we want to ensure that the pilot works smoothly. Again, for private development and unplanned or emergency work, that's something that we absolutely have to manage in year. But with that and also looking as we continue to work with the film board on film permits to try to manage that work as effectively as we can.
But do you have projects right now where on those streets that there are going to be delays?
Through you, on Wellington Street this year, we believe that project is going to be completed in August, and so
I'm talking from private developers. Do you have applications in for next year?
There are certainly private developments that are going to be within the downtown core next year, yes.
On those streets?
I would assume so. I don't have the list in front of me right now.
I see. You can get this for us, though?
Yes, we absolutely can.
Thank you. I'd like those.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cressy, questions?
Thank you, Speaker. Just a few. I'll begin with the General Manager of Transportation Services. Does King Street work today?
Through you, Madam Speaker, our assessment has indicated that King Street doesn't work particularly well for anybody today.
For anybody. So it's broken?
Yes, you can say.
Will this pilot, in your view, move more people quickly and reliably?
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, I believe that the ability to move transit, we have 65,000 transit riders per day that use the King Street corridor. We have lots of people who walk, cycle, and also some who drive to destinations along the corridor. And we believe this pilot in moving transit first and more effectively will, in fact, make the street work better.
Thank you. To the TTC CEO, has this type of transit-first approach been tried in other cities? Are we new here?
No, not at all, Councillor. I've seen plenty of evidence of this in the various places I've worked, both in London and in Sydney, Australia. There are transit priority corridors, and I can think of plenty of other examples around Europe, other systems that I visited, where there is a deliberate strategy of allowing or enabling transit to take priority. It's good practice.
And it's good practice because it moves more people quickly and reliably, is that right?
Well, I'd cite four benefits, actually, and these are the kinds of things we'd measure. Journey time, in other words, the end-to-end time that customers would travel on the whole route, but also through that central area. Punctuality, the ability for this transit to stick to timetable. Throughput, in other words, the amount of streetcars that we can push through of actual against plan. And finally, ridership. We would expect to see or hope to see an increase in ridership as transit becomes increasingly more attractive. That's what we're here to do.
And so I would pose the question, what does success look like? You just outlined journey time, punctuality, ridership. What does success look like when we evaluate this pilot?
For me, that people would look to use the King Street car more because it's more reliable and it moves more quickly and it's less frustrating. It's a more pleasant experience and it's a more efficient way of getting around town.
So if it moves more people quickly and reliably, it's a success?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
To our chief planner, what's the population of downtown Toronto today?
Through the Speaker, the current population is approximately 250,000 people within 17 square kilometres.
And that's the overnight population. Do you have a sense of what the daytime population would be?
Through the Speaker, the daytime population is approximately 500,000 people who come into the core in order to work.
So 250,000 or so people who live here, but another 500,000 people are coming into the city every day. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, that's correct, and that number continues to increase.
Okay. And the population in downtown is expected to increase, as is the amount of non-residential development. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, that's correct. The vast majority of the growth in the city continues to be in the core, both in non-res and residential.
So given that King Street, as we've heard from our General Manager of Transportation, is broken today, if we do nothing, are things going to get worse or better when it relates to moving people in and out of the core?
Through the Speaker, things will get worse. In fact, in the context of our analysis of the downtown and quick hits or quick wins to respond to the infrastructure deficit, that's where the King Street project emerged.
And in looking at other cities and how they're starting to plan their downtown cores given population growth and concentration of jobs and employment, should we be looking to redesign our streets to move more people as opposed to simply moving cars?
Through the Speaker, in the context of our official plan, we identify as a policy priority for the city to shift how we use our street infrastructure and to focus on moving people instead of moving cars, precisely because in rapidly densifying urban areas, it's a better way to move people.
And if this pilot works, do you think we should see it in other parts of downtown?
Through the Speaker, yes, to the extent that some version of it is applicable, but it would be great to get this launched first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ford, questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just like to apologize in advance. I do have a cold, so please, staff, bear with me. First off, thank you for this detailed report. I do have many of questions. On the first page of your report, we are moving 65,000 riders in transit, 20,000 vehicles, currently overcapacity of 20%. So to alleviate that overcapacity, are we looking to implement more streetcars on King, or will that be answered through less cars?
Councillor, no, we're not looking to put through more streetcars. What we're looking to do is get the existing service, both the 504 King and the 514 Cherry Street service. We're looking to prioritise transit such that that service, that scheduled service, can get through that particularly crowded section of King Street more efficiently and quickly.
Right. I think over to our transportation staff. So we have 20,000 vehicles. In your report, it says, and this is predominantly local traffic. Do you know the percentage of travelers from outside the core and outside the pilot area?
Through you, Madam Speaker, it varies depending on time of day and in the location of the corridor, but it's effectively around 40% of the corridor traffic that is local traffic that is going to local destinations.
So 40% are going to local. So that would be 60% going to other destinations. So how will the adjacent streets, I know Deputy Mayor Min Wong mentioned this, but I didn't really hear an answer. How will the adjacent streets be impacted?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we've done some preliminary analysis on travel times on adjacent streets and also on how the trips will array coming both from the eastbound and the westbound. And while it is not a database analysis, it's a predictive analysis. Our indication is that about 40% of the cars that are diverted off of King Street in the eastbound direction will use Adelaide. 30% will use Front and Wellington, and 20% will use Queen. And then in the westbound direction, about 75% of those will go via Wellington and Front Street, and about 25% on Richmond.
In your report, it says the minimum amount for this pilot project time will be 12 months. So the word minimum. Is there a maximum to this pilot?
Through you, Madam Speaker, that would be up to the Council to determine. We believe it's a pretty significant effort to put the pilot in place, and so we would not undertake it for less than a year.
Right.
We are amenable to doing it for longer if it is successful.
Right. So this is kind of be open-ended on the closure date. So staff have no plans in ending this pilot, and it's up to Council.
Through you, Madam Speaker, we are actually going to be monitoring regularly a number of indices, and we would come back to Council certainly before, but no later than a year from today. I believe we say that no later than December 31st, we would come back to Council with a proposed either continuation or completion of the pilot.
Right. I see in your report that the cost of this pilot is $1.5 million. For that specific, because I see a couple different costs here. For that $1.5 million, will that be on transportation services?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the $1.5 million is a combination of the Provincial Transit Infrastructure Fund plus city resources, transportation resources.
Right.
There's also an additional component of that the TTC has set aside for implementation as well.
So just referring to page 10, and something I know as a driver has gone in, had an issue on our roads in downtown Toronto. We are putting up barriers on King for pedestrians, of course for loading on and off the streetcar, is that correct? I do see an issue is that if we do have a streetcar breakdown, it looks to me like the street's going to come to a full halt because you have a barrier, then you have a streetcar, and no vehicles are. So what is the what is our plan if that were to happen?
Mr. Byford could answer that.
Yeah, sure. Standard practice, Councillor, what we would do is bring up the streetcar behind and effectively push it out the way, which minutes, because it's such an intense service. You bring up the streetcar behind, it's standard practice. That's how we deal with streetcar failures at the moment.
Okay, that was your last question. Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, can you please enlighten me how much extensive consultation you've done with the suburbs?
Through the Speaker, our consultation process was broad and across the entire city. It included a survey where we mapped the geographies of where people were responding, as well as what their interest was, whether they were a driver and a transit rider and a cyclist, or how they self-identified.
Chair to staff, how many people responded from Scarborough, North York, Etobicoke?
Do we have the breakdown by district? Through the Speaker, we had 2,200 respondents in total. We can get the breakdown by district for you.
Would you say that most of the respondents were from downtown or from the suburbs?
Through the Speaker, it's my understanding that approximately 50% were from the downtown core and the other 50% were from the surrounding areas in the city.
Did we do an elaborate outreach to the constituents of Scarborough? Did we have, let's say, show and tell? Do we do a dog and pony show where we went out there and said to them, this is how this is going to come down and this is how it's going to affect you?
Through the Speaker, we targeted stakeholder groups that have a specific interest in the corridor. So we worked with the 4 BIAs, the local residents groups, as well as the local councillors' offices, as well as the key constituencies that interface with the corridor as per the GM of Transportation Services.
Through the Speaker, did you do any outreach to Scarborough North?
Through the Speaker, we reached out to the entire city.
Did you have a session where you reached out to Scarborough North and said, we're going to have a town hall meeting, please come and see what we're going to do?
Through the Speaker, we did not hold individual town meetings in specific areas across the city.
Okay, I'm going to be more specific. How many people did you reach into my ward and say that we're going to do this on King Street, and how much enlightenment did you do to my constituents that this is going to happen on King Street to my constituents directly?
Councillor Karygiannis, the staff commented that they don't have the specifics and details.
Madam Chair, I've asked a specific question about my ward. I'd like to know how I'm voting.
The staff have
and if I don't
commented they don't have
I'm
specifics.
going to put my time on hold.
So if you want to wait for that information, they'll get the information.
Through the Speaker, the protocol that we used on this project is entirely consistent with the consultation protocol that we use on every process in the city. We rarely do a ward-by-ward consultation because there's so many wards in the city. One of our strategies in this instance was to use earned media in order to generate press across the city and a dialogue, and to expand the presence through social media and earned media.
The Deputy City Manager wants to answer.
Madam Speaker, just in order to try to bring this along, Councillor, we did not have a special session, a workshop in your ward. We had broad consultations across the city. We involved people extensively and provided them with opportunities to provide their comments, but no, we did not do a specific ward-by-ward workshop or any other description that you'd like to use on that matter.
Through the Chair, I'm sure whoever wants to answer, you'd be surprised that if people in my ward have not heard about this, it won't be a shock to you.
No, Madam Speaker, I don't expect that all members of the public would have fully understood the opportunity they had to engage in this process, so I would not be surprised.
I thank you. I asked staff to come and hold a special meeting in my ward, and unfortunately they didn't. So there you go. I was going to even open it up. Anyways, Madam Chair, I thank you.
I know. Can I have a quorum call? We don't quorum. Quorum call.
Members, please press your buttons to indicate your presence in the chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Mihevc, please.
Yes. No, it was me.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
There was nobody in here. Okay.
Councillor Davis.
Madam Speaker, quorum is present. There are 29 members in the chamber.
Okay, Councillor Holliday, questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is to the Chief Planner.
It was discussed that there was about 50% of the individuals that use this stretch of road are from outside of the downtown core. Did I get that right, about half?
Through the speaker, approximately 60%, that's
60.
correct,
Thank
come
you.
from the areas beyond the downtown.
In the consultations, what was the level of support of that 60%? Do we know? Those are the people that use the route, I guess, as a thoroughfare.
Through the speaker, we can bring it down, but we in fact have broken it down less by geography and more by user type, so by drivers, transit riders, business owners.
Okay. Can anyone tell me, what is the broader network plan for streets in the City of Toronto? Do we have a, Speaker, if you can put us on pause for just a moment, it'd be great. So there's so much noise in here, and I don't think the Chief Planner can hear me.
I don't know. Please, members of council, I could see that so many members of council are interested. They're, really. Okay. All right, Councillor Fragadakis, please.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Perruzza.
Madam Speaker, I don't often take issue with the chair. I was sitting diligently in my seat and intently interested in what the councillor was saying and was doing. But the minute you look around and in one broad sweep say that members of councillors are not interested, what you do is you denigrate the entire place, and you basically denigrate every single member of council from the chair because your microphone is perpetually on.
Thank you.
Coming from the Speaker of this Assembly, I think that's totally inappropriate, and I think that you should take that comment and
Yes, thank
exactly,
you.
right?
Well, Councillor Perruzza, when members of council get off from their seat and they walk over and they talk, to me, they're not listening. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Holiday, continue. Councillor Holiday, continue your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Holiday, do you want to continue your questions?
I do.
Yeah.
I need the Chief Planner to answer the question, though.
I'm not right. Councillor Perruzza, please, we want to move along. Councillor Holiday, please.
Thank you. I've lost 25 seconds
I'll
now.
put your time on hold.
Thank you kindly.
So you asked the staff questions?
I did.
Okay, who are you asking the questions to?
Chief Planner. Just give me a second.
Okay. Councillor Perruzza, I've acknowledged you and I've responded to you. Please, can we move on with the agenda?
Yeah. That was the complete streets amendments in the official plan.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Perruzza. That's enough. Okay, Councillor Holiday, please.
Thank you kindly. If I may ask the Chief Planner to answer the question about what is our broader network plan for roads? And if the General Manager of Transportation can help, I'm happy to take an answer from anyone.
Through the speaker, I can begin, and then if my colleague would like, she can add. In August of 2014, we brought forward complete streets policies in the official plan that were approved by City Council that recognize the redesign of the road right-of-way to focus on moving more people. That was in August of 2017. The Complete Streets guidelines were an outcome of that policy framework. They were before PWIC in March of 2017, and just recently this spring.
Respectfully, if I can just.
Okay, just one sec, please. There's far too much noise in here. Members of council are talking, and I can't hear. Please. Thank you.
So my time is precious. I've lost a minute. If
Yes,
I
I
can
know.
just interject with the Chief Planner respectfully, I'm not interested in the Complete Streets guidelines. I understand them very well, and I believe that they speak to the design of a street category. What I'm talking about is the broader network of how you move people from one end of the city to the other, and what is the network interface of the streets. How do we treat them, and how does this integrate into that planning? We're going to remove a piece of the network. So how does that fit into the overall plan?
Through the speaker, in the overall plan, in the official plan, King Street is identified as a surface transit route priority corridor. So this is an implementation of the existing policy framework, recognizing that King Street is a surface transit priority.
Thank you. There is presumably an impact on adjacent streets. My question to the GM of Transportation is when the local councillor gets additional phone calls about congestion, because either people are going to stay home and not take their cars, or they're going to shift their patterns, what are you going to do to address those calls that come through with the elevation and the diversion? You told me the percentages already of where the traffic is going to go.
Through you, Madam Speaker, we've also looked at travel time on adjacent corridors so we can understand more about where there's additional capacity beyond King Street. So certainly there's the ability to give people information in public education about what routes are better routes for them during the time of the pilot. I also think that we're going to see if transit is working as effectively as we hope it's going to work, that a number of people will shift their trip to a transit trip. And we will continue to monitor on a regular basis for a number of outcomes on the pilot. And so we will be making modifications as necessary, and that's something that we would get to the local councillor to indicate, and also have a thorough conversation with the businesses and with the constituents along the way so we can understand and head those off before they become a problem.
About 2 years ago, there was a terrible accident on the Gardiner or the Lakeshore, and I remember the fire crews had to close basically both of those arteries, the Lakeshore and the Gardiner, to run a hose across. That essentially cut off the west end of the city. So given that this is another route that West End drivers use, how will you react in an emergency of that proportion once again when we're taking away an option?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we've been, in terms of emergency response, we've been in pretty close contact with the fire chief and their data analysts to look at travel time response and emergency vehicle response, so that's certainly one tool we have in our toolbox. I also think that the reason why we selected the pilot area is because there is actually a much more robust street grid in this part of the downtown, and so there are parallel corridors that we can manage and modify should there be that kind of a congestion problem.
Okay, that was your last question.
Speaker, I did lose a minute. If I can ask one more, I really appreciate it.
Okay, you're right, you did lose a minute.
This is, I think, for the TTC. I want to be really crisp on this because I asked some questions during the briefing that was provided to me some time ago. I want to have a good understanding of the sources of delay for streetcars. It is my understanding the predominant source are left-hand turning vehicles along this corridor, along with some others in the report. I wondered if you could speak to that and also speak to me about how transit experience will be improved, because it says here, you mentioned earlier, there are no more streetcars planned for this, but the route is already at 20% over capacity.
Okay, that was your last question.
Okay, the primary cause of delay is traffic congestion, and particularly that caused by left turns. So you can literally have a full streetcar, in fact a succession of full streetcars held up because there's a left turn taking place ahead of it. So that's the primary cause of delay. In terms of the throughput, the fact that the streetcars will be moving through more quickly makes this service more efficient. Therefore, we will be able to spread the loads more evenly, even though in the morning peak, we're currently on the 504 at around 124% capacity, in other words, in excess of capacity. From December of this year, which forms part of the pilot period, we will be beginning to deploy the new bigger streetcars, so we will actually be adding some capacity.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you. So in order to solve that issue of the having TTC going through and the congestions, you have the pilot project, but this is not a 24/7 problem. You have peak hours. I mean, you don't have this problem at midnight, do you?
Obviously it's less of a problem at midnight, but even late at night, when there are still a lot of people using transit, you can still get hold-ups because of the left turns that take place where people are in town. And general numbers of roads, general congestion on the street. And obviously at 2 a.m., it's not so busy.
It's not as big, okay. And this is an area where we do have a high amount of tourism, hotels, entertainment district, and so on. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, this is the cultural center of the city. It's also the financial district, as well as a rapidly growing neighborhood. So there is, as is our objective in our planning frameworks, activity that takes place all throughout the day and the evening.
And the evening.
And the evening.
So a lot of that activity that we're talking about, and sometimes even some safety issues that we have with people coming out of the bars and the clubs at night, happens during the evening, actually outside of this peak hour that we're trying to solve for this issue. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, what's unique about this area is the fact that it has a working population during the day, but that entertainment district function in the evening, which means there is a high volume of pedestrians through a much more extended period than you see in other parts of the city.
Would you say that, particularly at that time during the night, that between the TTC and our cab industry, that is the largest portion of transportations, the modes of transportation that people use on King Street?
Through you, Madam Speaker, the both taxis and the TTC, as well as other, what do we call them here, PVCs? Ride-sharing vehicles, as well as pedestrian activity is certainly the most significant. But there is a significant amount of activity between transit and the taxis when the clubs and bars
During the
let
night,
out.
yeah. Would you support measures to accommodate the taxi industry at that point at night, during those peak hours where people are coming out of the clubs and the entertainment district?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we believe that as a pilot-first transit, as a transit-first pilot project, that our main goal is to move transit as quickly and effectively as we can. And we certainly have recognized that there's also a safety issue in the evening hours, late night, that is caused by this dispersal.
Councillor,
And that we need to address.
And Councillor, may I just add to that? I mean, my job as the CEO of the TTC obviously is to advocate for TTC customers. So my view for the TTC's perspective is that we want to maintain the purity of this trial. In other words, the trial as is proposed with no exemptions, if that's what you're suggesting for taxis. Now, it may be that your will is, the will of council is something different, but certainly from our perspective, in order to make this trial work properly and effectively, that trial should be in place throughout the day for the whole period.
Yes,
and the whole duration
throughout
of
the
the
day,
course.
absolutely. We're just trying to understand if there's another issue that we need to bring to address, which actually doesn't become a conflict with the main goal of the project and the pilot as a whole.
Understood.
Thank you.
Councillor Pasternak, questions?
Sorry, gotta go. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you to the Chief Planner, would it be safe to assume that there's been dozens of approved development applications in this catchment area in which, I guess, workers or residents would be using this transit corridor?
Through the Speaker, that's correct. This area is the fastest growing area of the city.
Now, would it be a requirement of each of those applicants to have an independent transit study or transportation study submitted with their application?
Through the Speaker, not a broader transportation study, but they would need to address the loading and servicing issues specific to their site. For some time in the policy framework, alongside of those applications, we've identified the need to be enhancing the transit service along the corridor as the key way to move more people as the area densifies.
So were there some or a lot of these studies that flagged this as a slow, unreliable, and erratic and unpredictable travel time transit corridor?
Through the Speaker, for some time it's been flagged that there needs to be a response to address and improve and enhance the transit service along the corridor to respond to this increasing growth.
Now I come to another point. So this has been flagged for some time. The $1.5 million is taken out of a transit fund, which, to the best of my knowledge, should be used for other things. But normally you get an applicant, and correct me if I'm wrong, to do infrastructure remediation, whether it's streetscape improvements. We've asked for right-hand turn lanes. Development applications as part of their agreement with the city are often required to make those investments. Is that your? Would you agree that that's could be part of the planning process?
Through the Speaker, there is a portion of the development fee that is allocated to a whole variety of different investments in infrastructure, including everything from libraries to community facilities, but it has never been the assumption or the intent that that portion of development fee could ever pay for large-scale capital projects.
I think Mr. Byford...
Well, 1.5...
Councillor Pasternak, I think Mr. Byford wanted to
It wasn't on that. It wasn't on that point, Councillor. It was on the previous. But I think the chief planner answered.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Would you consider $1.5 million to be a large-scale capital project?
Through the Speaker, absolutely not.
So my question is, why aren't any one of these dozens of approved applicants or pending applicants paying for the startup?
Through the Speaker, this is the busiest surface transit corridor. It's a critical backbone to the overall transit system and the functioning of the financial district, which serves not only the city but the region as a whole. I think it could easily be argued that this is a critical part of citywide and regional infrastructure as opposed to infrastructure that is needed to respond to the local impact of new development. In addition, we know that the vast majority of people who live in the core who are moving into the core and live directly adjacent to the financial district are in fact using walking and cycling as their primary form of transportation. So it's difficult to draw a direct line between those developments and the need for this infrastructure. It serves citywide and regional purposes.
And Councillor, if I might just add to that, I appreciate your short of time, but I think that to try to persuade developers to make such a contribution, I think would put the pilot at risk. What we want to do, precisely because you described the King Street as is service as slow and unreliable, despite our best efforts, is not wait any longer and push on with this, and that's why I would support the Chief Planner. I think this is a really good investment, particularly when you consider that this benefits 65,000 daily customers of transit.
No, yes, I thank you, Mr. Byford. So do you think when we ask developers in North York or maybe Ward 10 to fund a right-hand turn lane or lay-by parking or streetscape improvements, would you say that is scope creep?
Through the Speaker, to my earlier point, when we ask for those contributions, it is because the development is having a direct impact on the direct area. So we can make that link through a transportation study. And my point is that this is in fact a corridor that is serving a much broader catchment area, and the challenge that we see here on King Street, in part it's a result of our success of the financial district. It's not directly linked to one specific development. In the instances where we make those asks of a developer, it is because the impact is being generated by that specific development.
Okay, that was your last question. You're way over time. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, thank you very much. Some might say that we are acting too quickly, not paying attention to the right things here. I'm wondering, we're not the first city in the world to do this. Are we being innovative in a way that other cities have yet to see? Are we experimenting in ways that other cities have not seen? How innovative and radical is this, what we're doing here?
Through the Speaker, this is in fact not radical. It's tried and true. It's been tried and exists in many cities of the world, and particularly dense urban cities, and the GM can speak specifically to her experience in Seattle.
Would it be fair to say, indeed, that there's scarcely a city, certainly that I'm aware of, and I haven't done tons of traveling, in Europe that doesn't have such a street, a dedicated street that is public transit only, or public transit and cycling, or public transit and pedestrian only?
I'd say,
travel a lot, Mr.
I'd say absolutely, Commissioner. I can think of plenty of cities in Germany, in France, in Holland, even in the UK now, where street transit is coming back big time, whether that's buses or light rail, trams, as I'll call them. In the UK, it's common practice.
And in the United States, my information is that the top largest 50 cities in the United States have, in the last 10, 15 years, or on the cusp of, putting in similar kinds of systems, actually brand new systems. Would that be somewhat accurate?
That is correct, including Detroit, which is a good example of a car city that along Woodward Avenue has just reinstated at-grade high-order transit along a dedicated route.
I ask the same to the Transportation General Manager.
Through you, Madam Speaker, yes, I would agree. I've seen examples similar in Portland, certainly in Seattle, which while just about 700,000 people has converted their principal transit corridor, which serves 300,000 transit riders and pedestrians a day, into a similar configuration that we're going to be
So it would not be
proposing.
fair to say then that we are taking the giant leap forward, but more that we are really kind of, in our timid Toronto way, following suit to what is actually best practices globally discovered already.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I think there's a lot of very rich and robust examples of this type of application used in cities successfully.
And on the economic side, are there, I am not aware of any, would you be aware of any example out there where the local economy, the street economy, has suffered as a result of this kind of public transit intervention?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I couldn't put an answer to that specifically. I don't believe they typically are a cornerstone of building a vibrant, walkable, transit-friendly downtown. Often in cities where these are launched, there's a robust dialogue with the business owners and the business associations to ensure that this is working appropriately and changes get made when they need to be.
So you're not aware, or perhaps Mr. Byfoot, I see him saying or indicating and know that there are no global indications that this has actually hurt the local economy. Are you aware of any study that says that?
No, I'm not.
So this is low risk that this is going to hurt us economically. And then, so my last question is this. Your proposal, is it between Bathurst and Jarvis? Are we being bold enough? Are we being a little timid here in the proposal that you have put forth, and should we be taking maybe another step or two even with the pilot?
Through you, Madam Speaker, I think that we are appropriately rolling out something, and we're going to test it, and we're going to make sure that it's appropriate in other corridors, but I think it is an extremely low-risk proposition, and one that we could certainly look at its application broader once we start to look at the data to ensure that it is delivering what we expect it to deliver.
Okay, then my last question based on your answer there is that will the evaluation itself include an analysis of how this can be extended, either eastward or westward, or perhaps to an avenue to the north, well, only to the north?
Through you, Madam Speaker, we have actually looked at the entire King Street corridor as a precursor to selecting the pilot area. So if we were to extend it east or west, we would have some very good preliminary data in place to look at that.
And that could be part of the evaluation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly, questions?
Thank you, Speaker. Inquiring minds want to know answers to certain questions. And my questions are addressed to the transportation czar, Czarina. Whenever transportation issues come up, I always give Professor Hayter, Ryerson University, a call. Are you familiar with him?
Through you, I am not, but I know the faculty there is quite strong.
And when I called him on this, his first and I think only question was, have you studied the abutting streets to see their capacity to take diverted traffic?
Through you, we have. We've done a preliminary analysis, and we will continue to monitor real-time travel times on the corridors, both the east-west corridors of Adelaide, Richmond, as well as some of the north-south corridors as well. And in fact, by the end of the year, I think actually a little before the end of the year, we will have a more robust travel model of a large swath of downtown from Dundas to the waterfront.
Now, this is a pilot project, is that correct?
That is correct.
Whenever I mention or use the word pilot in conversations with constituents, they tend to disbelieve me, that they believe that pilot is really a word that covers over a permanent change. And so my question to you would be, do you have measuring standards already in place that say if we don't meet all or many of the requirements, this pilot project would be considered as unworkable or untenable?
So through you, Madam Speaker, two things on that. One is that while we certainly are going to be looking at trend lines on the measurements that we are taking to ensure that we're either hitting success or we're not hitting success, we're going to do that routinely.
How are you defining success?
Well, I think we've talked about it in terms of improved transit time, improved travel time for transit vehicles, expanded or more ridership on transit, a number of economic factors, vibrant public realm, and we are going to be monitoring, although I'm not going to say what we would call success, but we're certainly going to be monitoring travel time for vehicles on all adjacent corridors. The other thing I just wanted to mention about a pilot is that we are not putting any of this infrastructure in any kind of permanent fashion. We're using signs and paint and markings, and to me that is something that is very comforting about a pilot project truly, is that you're not actually constructing anything out of concrete.
Well, one of the aspects of pilot projects that characterizes them, and I'm searching for the right words, not irritate constituents, is that if you don't have these precise measurement standards in place up front, what you have going forward is a game where you're continually moving the goalposts.
So through you, we've been asked by members of the TTC board to come back before the pilot actually launches with some more concrete measures of success, and we're doing that analysis to be able to hit that before the end of the year, certainly before we launch. We also will be continually tracking and monitoring all of the metrics that we've identified in our reports, and we'll be reporting back to Council December 31st with an assessment of that. And so at that point, we can make the determination, and the Council will make the determination as to whether the pilot was truly a success.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, and I always do stop myself. Okay. Councillor Grimes, questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Mihevc and I think Councillor Kelly kind of touched on some of my questions, but my question to Mr. Byford, and I probably already know the answer, but I think I'll ask anyway. So some of these times on the pilot project we'll be looking, that'll be uploaded to the Waterfront West modeling we're doing and all that work we're doing in the Waterfront West. Those times will be added into that?
You'll see in the paper there's a proposed dashboard where we look at the impacts on other streets, and certainly we should be able to look at what the
travel times,
travel times and impact is.
Bay or Roncesvalles downtown.
Absolutely,
we'll have that data that'll be uploaded to Waterfront West.
Sure, and we will make sure that we have before and after statistics so that we can properly evaluate the pilot. To Councillor Kelly's point.
My other question was that Councillor, are we being bold enough? We had this going all the way along to Roncesvalles. I touched to Councillor Perks briefly about that, but we maybe could have some times on that.
Sure. I mean, I think you do this thing in an iterative way, and I mean, ideally, I'd love to have dedicated transit ways everywhere on every route, but being realistic, I think this will, I'm hopeful that this will prove that if you give transit a fighting chance of getting through, it becomes a very attractive proposition, and on a range of measures, it will prove to be successful. If it is, count on me to be back here to see if we can do something more expansive.
All right, did I hear wrong? I think it was under Councillor Bylaw's question. Did I hear it's not busy down there at midnight? Because my younger colleague, Councillor DeChannel, said Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's absolutely packed between
No, absolutely not. No, I said it was busy then. Sort of 2 a.m. onwards, it will begin to to wane. But midnight, I've been down there at midnight. It is pretty busy, which is why we're saying, from a TTC perspective, don't water this down. Let's keep the pressure on because the streetcars still struggle to get
That's
through
information I got
even
from
late
Councillor
at night.
Chano's down there at 12, 1, 2 in the morning.
Sure.
He tells me it's absolutely packed all the time.
It's busy. Yeah.
So, Councillor DiCiano, you were listening, were you? Councillor DeGiorgio, questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two quick questions. One of Mr. Byford. Mr. Byford, can you give me an indication of is there a constant frequency of streetcars right around 24 hours a day, or is there more of can you just give me a distribution of streetcars throughout the day?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty intense, and don't forget, through that section of King, you have two streetcar services. You've got the 504 King, and you've got the 514 Cherry Street. What we do is we ramp up the service. From the start of traffic, we ramp up the service to have a more intense service at the morning peak, and again for the evening peak, but it's pretty intense throughout the day. But obviously, you have it at its most intense at the busiest times, namely the peak periods.
So just because I guess people have different definitions of morning peak and evening peak, so can you just give me a time span there for morning peak and evening?
Sure. Well, typically, I'm just seeing if I've got the actual specifics. Typically, can you answer that, Jackie? 7 till 10, I guess, for the morning peak? Go for it.
7 to 10?
Morning peak, through the speaker, morning peak for us is usually from 7 until 9:30, 10 in the morning.
Okay. And evening?
Evening goes from 3:34 until it's going on some routes up to 8 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you. And then for transportation, and the Commissioner of Transportation, I understand that on King Street, at least my recollection was that we have 20,000 vehicles a day traveling on,
That's correct.
and a large proportion of the cars are presumably taxis, from what I understand as well.
Yes, there are about a quarter to a third of vehicles during the day that are taxis. In the evening, that increases to about 38% in each direction. So they're dispersing the crowds that come out largely after the clubs close. But they have an active trade all evening.
Okay, so the distribution, or there are more taxis in the evening. But how's although there's 20,000 cars per day, again, I'm wondering, where's the heavy distribution of the cars? I mean, from 2 p.m. maybe to 6 a.m., there might not be many cars traveling, as far as I know, on King Street, but where's the heavy constant flow?
So through you, certainly the PM peak is a very heavy time. I believe that
for cars as well?
For cars as well. I believe that the 10 to 4 time frame is almost as busy as the AM peak. So it's a pretty consistently busy street.
So it's a constant flow.
It's a pretty consistently busy street.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, questions?
Yep, a couple of quick questions for Mr. Byford. We have, in terms of dedicated right-of-ways for streetcars, are there 3 that we have in the city now, Harbourfront, St. Clair, and Spadina, or are there more?
No, that's correct.
That's correct. How long, yeah, Queensway, yeah, I guess so. Right, yeah, that's the one that's all torn up right now. And St. Clair has been in right-of-way for how many years?
I think it was 2010 that it was brought in, so 2010, 2011.
And Spadina, it's around the same time?
Yeah, about that same time. They've both been very successful.
Would the TTC have data on the improvements that they have seen on those right-of-ways as a result of, freeing up the space?
We do, I
didn't expect you would have it, but if you have it,
actually, we do, and we can provide that to you. I'm just going to quote a couple. Queen's Quay came in 1990.
Right.
Before, and this is passengers per day. And I'm just approximating this because I'm looking at an axis on a graph. It looks like around 2,500 per day. Afterwards, after Queen's Quay right-of-way was introduced, it's just short of 15,000. Spadina was 1997. It was around 26,000 before. It's now over 40,000. St. Clair, I was correct, 2010, that was just shy of 30,000. That's now north of 35, so it's around 38,000.
Okay, so that to me would be the more relevant statistic, because in the other two areas have been areas of considerable population growth.
Sure.
Okay.
St. Clair would probably be a better comparator, because although there have been some new apartment blocks put up, that rose, as I said, from around 28,000 to, I'm guessing this must be about 37,000 on this graph.
And if you were asked, would the TTC have the comparable times before and after?
We
travel
do.
times?
I don't think I have them.
I don't
but we
need it
can
right now,
provide
but
them.
you would have that.
Yep, we
Okay,
can
all right.
provide them.
That's all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Layton, questions?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is to, let's say, the Chief Planner on the public engagement portion of the report. Now, I know that there's been some questions from my colleague, Councillor Karagiannis, about specifically engagement in his ward. I'm just curious. You involved the local councillors whose wards the pilot was running in, correct?
Through the Speaker, that's correct.
Now, I'm just, how many public meetings or town halls were hosted in Ward 19, the ward I represent, as one of those 4 councillors? How many?
Through the Speaker, 0.
None were hosted.
Correct.
Could I ask you then, how many Facebook ads were targeted at Ward 19 residents, specifically Ward 19 residents?
Through the Speaker, 0, but we in fact mailed out 30,000 public meeting flyers to the adjacent area. We also held drive time radio ads. We also, the TTC held ads in the subway system and ads in the streetcar system, and we handed out 7,500 postcards to users along the corridor. We had 27,000 unique web page views from across the entire city, and we had over 400 people from all over the city attend our May public meeting.
Now, did you only involve the BIAs that had only local residents, or did you involve the other BIAs that perhaps represent the 500,000 people that, or 250,000 people that don't live in this particular area, but actually live out in the outside area, but come and work in this neighborhood?
Through the Speaker, it's we invited and worked very closely with the BIAs along the entire corridor, but we created a technical working group, a stakeholder advisor group that had over 60 different organizations represented. That included a whole variety of interests that represent the entire city, as well as very local interests.
So wait, you involved people from other places in the city, but you didn't host a public meeting in Ward 19 for this project, even though that Ward 19 is actually part of the public area? You involved people from other places in the city, put on radio ads, but did not host a public meeting in Ward 19. Am I just getting that sense from you?
Through the Speaker, that's correct.
It's an injustice, is what it is, to not only the people of North Scarborough, but to the people of Ward 19 who are in the middle of it.
Councillor Layton, do you want to retract that?
Sorry, I'm being told the sarcasm meter has just broken, so maybe I'll go on to questions to our TTC chief, just on what changes have already been made to the King Street line to try to alleviate some of the congestion along it.
Good question. Numerous changes. We have worked with City Transportation to have the illuminated no left turn signs put up, and that has had some impact. At the TTC, we've also done enforcement of the route to get cars towed where they shouldn't be parked. We have introduced all-door boarding with a proof of payment regime. We have supplemented King Street with buses. So a whole range of changes have been made to try to get the route to work more effectively, but that's still not enough. We still suffer greatly from this over-congestion along that route.
Just along that centre route?
Primarily. I mean, the whole route is challenging, but through that central core, in spite of those various changes that we've made, that's still a real struggle.
So we've done just about everything we can possibly do, save digging a tunnel under King Street to improve service. Is that safe to say?
Rephasing traffic light timings to give transit priority. So yeah, we haven't dug a tunnel yet, but everything else, we've pretty much done all of the pilot activity that we can think of.
So there is a transit priority lane currently on King.
There is.
If you could call it that. What challenges exist to enforcing that? Because my understand it's an enforcement challenge. And how will this pilot, in fact, help address those concerns?
Well, the main impediment to our streetcar service is that you still get people wanting to turn left. So if we can stop the through traffic, which this trial is designed to do, and get people, they can still access local blocks, but they must turn right at the end of a block. That will mean that you don't have that left turn, those left turns going on, and the streetcars have a much clearer run. The design whereby people can get on and off is also inherently safer. So there's safety as well as capacity and reliability benefits.
Just because it's my last question, did you attend a public meeting in Ward 19 related to this project?
I'd have to check my ward boundaries. I attended a meeting downtown, and it was very well attended, and it was very well received.
Ward 19 isn't downtown enough for you? You couldn't host a meeting in Ward...
I couldn't swear it wasn't Councillor Cressy's ward, but it was downtown.
I believe it was.
Right. So I'm sorry, Councillor, I stand corrected. Yes, I did.
Thank you. So he was in Ward 19. Well, I know he was in Ward 11.
I don't know if you've been to Ward 14.
I'm sorry, I have actually. I've been to a very good diner in
You
your...
heard it. I'm surprised you heard it.
I've got very good hearing.
Okay, that's it for the questions. Now we'll go to the speakers. Mayor Tory.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a motion which I think is going to be circulated, and we'll put it up, and I'll just maybe briefly run through before making some general comments what it provides for. I think I've acknowledged before at the time of the Executive Committee meeting we didn't do an adequate job unintentionally of consulting with and talking to the taxi industry with respect to how this would impact on them, and I'm happy to say that I think we've come some distance since then, and so the first paragraph here is to provide for a late night exemption from the prohibition against through movement on King Street from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Because there's no question in my mind, and I think in many of the minds in this room, that the cab industry does represent an important part of the overall transportation system to get people around, and especially at that time of night in that part of town. So that it provides for that. It provides for a doubling, approximately, it says, doubling of the number of taxi stand spaces through the length of the pilot project, which our officials tell us can be done. It talks about finding some, I'll call it replacement on-street parking spots on the side streets, so if we carefully examine those along the length of the pilot project, and then it finally asks the Police Service Board and the Chief of Police to work with our transportation staff on a strategy for educating the public and enforcing the pilot project. So I hope that members will support this motion, and I should say that it is meant to address, and I think it does, some of the significant concerns of the taxi industry so they can play the role that we want them to continue to play in the downtown, especially at that time of day that is provided for by the exemption. May I just say by way of general comment, Madam Speaker, that I think everybody agrees. I haven't found a single person yet, whatever their view may be on what it is we're proposing to do today, that doesn't agree with the notion that King Street, in its present configuration and present form, is dysfunctional. It is dysfunctional. So to me, the notion of doing nothing is not a viable option for us. The second thing is, and I'm a believer in this, I was a believer in it when it came to Bloor Street and the bicycle lanes, and I'm a believer here that I think it is a sensible way to go about things to have a pilot project. And I think that the extensive public consultation that Councillor Layton was just asking about, and Mr. Byford and others have talked about, helped us to refine this. I've sort of watched as the process has unfolded from 3 or 4 different options down to the one that is being recommended, and even that has been, I think, improved upon by some of the things we've done, for example, with regard to taxis. But the bottom line is we're going to do something to address the dysfunction, and we're going to do something that is done by way of a pilot project, which we will then be able to assess in all respects once it is the pilot project period is up, and decide whether it's working and what to do about all of that. But what it does, Madam Speaker, is it does what we must do given the numbers and given our principal responsibility here, which is to make sure that we move the greatest number of people in the best way possible around the city. And so what it is not doing, it is not stopping people in cars from moving around the city. And I will say on the subject that's been asked about in the question period, that I have asked, in that way that I will ask when we sit down together with all the relevant people from construction and public works and everywhere else, are there any, just because I know somebody was asking about it a few minutes ago, are there any public undertakings that are happening of the kind of which there are quite a few this year on Queen Street and so on? Are there any happening on those parallel streets while we have the pilot project going? And I've been informed the answer to that question is no. And so I can assure you there will be no one watching this more diligently and faithfully and with a keener eye than I will be to make sure that to give this the best chance in circumstances where we're not having construction to work on those parallel streets vis-a-vis the traffic, that I'll be watching that very carefully. But the other thing that is really the principal feature of this is going to, we are told by those who advise us in these matters, help the transit to be more reliable and to move better. My son is one of the many people, so it's not totally anecdotal from out of there. My son and his fiance, they live and walk along the street along King Street to go to work every morning, and they walk because they would take transit sometimes, mostly because they're later than they should be, but they can walk faster than the streetcar goes. That is clearly not an acceptable arrangement in the 1900s, let alone in the 21st century. We've got to take some of these steps that account for the fact that we've allowed massive development to occur to the west. This is one of the biggest surface transit routes in North America, and that we have to take account of the fact that right now that street is not working, and it's especially not working for the greatest number of people, 65,000, who are traveling by way of transit. Two final comments, Madam Speaker. Consistent with what we're doing on Bloor Street, we are going to measure this 19 ways from Sunday, because that's what you do in pilot projects, to see what parts are working and what parts might not be working. And so we're going to measure it carefully. It isn't just going to be something where we just say, well, either somebody concludes in a report. And finally, I would just say that to those who are slightly reluctant about this, we have to do something and we have to try to make this work. I'm convinced from all the work that's been done and all the consultation that's taken place, this is the best available option with some improvements we're making today through these motions, and that we should support this as something that a 21st century city must do to move people effectively and to protect the livability and the economy of the city. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We do have a question for you. Councillor Kergianis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, through you to the Mayor. You would agree that we, in the beginning, we had failed the taxi industry in the consultations.
I think when I heard the whole thing explained, Madam Speaker, through you to some of your questions at the Executive Committee, it was evident to me that through misdirected emails to the wrong people and all this kind of thing, there clearly had not been the kind of consultation there should have been, but I think that we've tried to make up for lost time. When I say we, the city has, in recent weeks by sitting down and discussing some of these issues in considerable detail, one-on-one, which I think is a better way even than the town hall meetings and all that kind of thing. They're good for their own purpose. So I think we hadn't done as good a job at the beginning.
Would you be amenable to a friendly amendment instead of 10 p.m. to change that to 9 p.m. because a lot of the people that are coming downtown to the entertainment district are either trying to catch a dinner, catch a show, and allowing the taxi cabs to come through at 10 o'clock might be a little too late.
Madam Speaker, through you, I have obviously heard about this business of whether it should be 9, 10, or some other hour. I've also listened to our officials and listened to others. And, I also made a joke, not that it's a joking matter, but I made a joke when speaking to the media at lunchtime today to the effect that I asked my own kids why they're going out at 11 o'clock when I'm going to bed. That's the time they seem to go out. And look, I'm sure there are some people who go out at 9 o'clock on all hours of the night. I'm informed that the best we can do in terms of balancing all the different interests we have to balance, which is transit vehicles, traffic, and the consistency of the rules, and accommodating the taxi industry, is 10 o'clock. And so I appreciate that you're putting the amendment forward, or you're proposing it in a friendly manner, but I can't accept it. I've moved my motion at 10 o'clock deliberately because I'm advised that's the best, and I believe that is the best balance that we can achieve from 10 until 5.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cressy to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. And this vote and consideration day of King Street has been a long time coming, years and years in the works. And before anything else, I want to start by thanking and commending staff, because we've had 3 departments working together jointly to bring this forward. And that's important to note. The TTC, led by Andy Byford, Transportation Services, led by our new GM, taking up a big project right off the top, and Barbara Gray, and of course, City Planning, and our Chief Planner, Jennifer Keesmatt, who's been championing this from the very beginning. And I want to start by commending and thanking all 3 of them in particular, but all our staff who've worked on this. And I'll make my remarks as one of 2 local city councillors for this pilot project. And unfortunately, the other local councillor is our Deputy Mayor, Councillor McConnell, who, if she was here and not battling in a hospital, I have to tell you, she'd be giving a much better and more forceful speech on King Street than I would. And Pam, if you're in the hospital listening, we'll do this for you right now. King Street is in fact broken, and we know that. And it does not work for anybody. Nobody. If you drive, you avoid King at all costs. If you take the streetcar, as the mayor indicated, you often get out and walk. If you're walking on the sidewalk, they're often overcrowded. It just is broken. King Street doesn't work. And meanwhile, it is the busiest surface level transit route in all of Toronto. It is the 3rd busiest transit route, surface or underground, in the whole city. And it is time, which is what we're doing here, to simply redesign a street to move people quickly. That's all. This is about moving people and rethinking how you use a street. It's not more complicated than that. But it's not just about moving people quickly today. It is about the future. The population of downtown Toronto, which is represented by Councillor McConnell, Wong Tam, and myself, has a population of 250,000 people. That's how many people live in the downtown core. But the daytime population of downtown grows to nearly 900,000 people. 1/3 of all the jobs in the entire city are located downtown, to say nothing of the universities located downtown. And with 41% of all non-residential development in the city happening in downtown, it's only going to become more dense during the day. And so, yes, this is about quality of life. It's about getting people in and out of the downtown quicker so they have more time to spend with their families. But it's also about economic prosperity. We cannot have a city that has a huge economic hub located in the core that people cannot get to quickly. And so, if we're going to move people in and out of the core quickly, if we're going to get people back to their houses quickly or to their jobs quickly, we need to use the street better. There's been a lot of discussion about taxis, and I would simply say that the entire purpose of this project is a transit-first purpose. And making it a full exemption for taxis is not transit-first. But we need to recognize that there are different needs, and I would say as a local councillor, overnight there is a real issue with people getting in and out of the clubs. I deal with it every weekend with our local police division. And having a partial exemption overnight outside of the peak hours to allow people to get in and out of the core, I think it makes sense for the taxis, for the businesses, and for public order. And so I think it's worth trying, and we'll see how it goes. I'll just close and not use the full 5 minutes by saying that I recognize that change is hard. I often say, and you all know it well, that you cannot put a speed bump on a local street without fierce debate. Anything involving our streets is deeply personal and deeply hard because we all use them. But on King, change is absolutely necessary. To do nothing is only to let it get worse, but it's also not revolutionary. Cities around the world have done this already. We're late to the game. And so, if we are going to enter the 21st century and start designing streets to move people and not just cars, King Street is a good place to start, and I hope this spreads right across downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday?
Hello, Speaker. Just make sure you got my mic on here. And if I can have some assistance, I'm going to use the overhead projector. I guess I have 2 motions as well. If I could have the clerks put those up. There should be no surprise that I have some opposition to this. So my first motion is to take a different path, to make some improvements. And should that fail, I have a second motion that at least offers a tweak to the project as it is proposed. So I guess the obvious question is, you know, why is the guy from the West End, from Central Etobicoke, advocating against this? You know, what interest do I have in this? But it reminds me of a debate we had recently at Public Works, where Councillor Fillion came and very valiantly advocated for changes to the community that he represents along Yonge Street. And what I took away from that was it was a very much a local use of the road versus a network perspective of the road. He wanted some changes that would serve his local community better. It was going to be deleting some traffic lanes. It was going to be some public realm improvements. And that ultimately took a different path. But I think a lot of members of PWIC, at least for sure myself, said, I appreciate the argument and the wants of the local people there, but what I have to think about is how the network works in the city and how we move people back and forth. So I don't know. I was on King Street in May. If I could have this put up on the screen. You know, it's a really nice street. This is the middle of the day. Cars were free-flowing. People were free-flowing along the sidewalk. And I was thinking about this upcoming debate. And I rode the streetcar that day, and I said, yeah, absolutely. I've been through the streetcar at rush hour, and it's miserable. But so is a lot of surface transit all over the downtown core, and that's to do with volume. And we heard from Mr. Byford today, and he talked about the delay due to congestion and volume, and the delay to left-hand turns. And you know, what we're really doing in this, and let's be really clear about these loops and so on, this is what it is. We're closing the road, and we're saying local traffic only. We are essentially shutting down the artery. And I'm not sure why we want to go that far. If we haven't tried other things, such as some continued work on prohibiting left-hand turns, because I heard it today and I heard it earlier, that at least is the main problem at this point in time. So, to illustrate my point even further, you know, surprise, that's the human heart. And, you know, again, why is the guy from the West End worried about this kind of stuff? Well, we think about these arteries, and here we are, we have King. Maybe we've got Bloor Street over here. Maybe we've got the Gardner. You know, as we do construction on these roads, we begin to block these up, and we take away some live lanes, start to fill up these arteries, and it should be no surprise. Well, what happens when you start to close off the arteries? Well, the heart dies and the body dies. And I really don't want to be a contributor to that. So what do surgeons do when they encounter these? They create a bypass. And so my second motion really is to look at the notion of Front Street as at least the bypass for our project. Maybe this is going to affect King Street. And to illustrate why I believe in that, here's a map of the core. We've got King Street that runs right through here. We've got Front Street right down here. And I think motorists will come along and they will use King. Sorry, I can't do that from there, but it's this linkage right here that's so important. What happens when you come to those road closed, do not enter signs? Well, you have to make the jump over here. And I really in earnest would ask this council that if you're going to do this, and I will point out that, I represent the people of Central Etobicoke. So we really aren't going to see a big gain in changing the configuration about serving the local community for streetcars. But we will lose a valuable route in and out of the city, and one that becomes even more valuable if there's an accident on the Gardner or some other type of construction disruption or what's happening on Queen Street this summer. I would ask the council that you at least allow some improvements to this linkage here so that the motorists that do use this as a bypass or as a flow through the city, and there's nothing wrong with that, with driving into the core and using your city and then going back home at the end of the day, that you at least give some relief so that this thing continues to function, and that although Front Street isn't ideal and it isn't the perfect linkage, at least there is some ability to flow back and forth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Dr. Holliday. Thank you. Recess to 6:30.